All right, guys. So we are, it's Rest Round episode 11. We are with the Jitzchickz. We've got Abby and Margot.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and obviously Butch is with us here as well. Ladies, you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast and what you have going on?
Go ahead, Abby.
It's always me.
It's always Abby.
Yeah, so we started the podcast a couple months ago now, and we just got to talking one day and said we should start a podcast talking about jiu-jitsu and kind of everything that we do, because we're kind of wild, not in a party way, but we're always side hustling. We do lots of stuff with our dogs. We raw meal prep. We're always going in and side hustling, and we both work hard. We're in the construction field in very different ways, which is kind of a different perspective on the world than I think a lot of women bring to the table. And we basically wanted to make something that everybody could enjoy. You know, you guys could log on and be like, this is a cool thing to listen to, you know, like a conversation, and not just like every other women's jiu-jitsu podcast that's like, let's bitch about males and jiu-jitsu, you know?
Oh God, yeah. So we don't want to do a women's perspective of jiu-jitsu. We just want to do a perspective of jiu-jitsu and how it entangles in regular life while doing a million other things. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Since you mentioned that, like, what do you do in the construction stuff? That's a hard job, right? I mean, I assume. I've always kind of been a pussy, so I don't know, but it seems like it's a hard job.
I do actually the accounting part of hurricane impact windows and doors. And then she works for a construction company, and she pretty much runs the whole show. She tells everybody what to do.
I don't run the show, but I'm an assistant superintendent, and now I've stepped into my first role as a full superintendent on a construction site.
At 21 years old, by the way.
That's pretty awesome. You guys are both in Florida, I assume, right?
Yes.
It's probably a good guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
No, I live in California.
Yeah. we're here through osmosis. There's a line between us. Meanwhile, we didn't mean to dress the same today. That was an accident.
We put on matching things. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. We do it all the time.
Yeah, that works. So do you live close to each other, or what? How does that work? I know.
Yeah,
it's a weird question, but the reason I'm asking is because I know you always, like, when I talk to Margot, she was like, well, I gotta wait and see what Abby's doing, or right. So I'm thinking, like,
I mean, we run on slightly different schedules. We always run into each other at jiu-jitsu at the end of the day, because we train every night, but we live about a half hour from each other.
10 minutes if I'm driving.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes if she's driving.
That's awesome. And is that Jupiter, Florida then? Am I right?
Yeah, I'm up in Jupiter. She's in Palm Beach Gardens area. So it's like 15-20 minutes from each other. So she rides horses, and her horse is out by my house. So she comes out here every day too. So
really, I don't really come to visit Margot. It's just, you know, she grabs me as I'm passing by her house most of the time. She blocks the road.
Yeah.
No, but we met through jiu-jitsu. I started training at the gym a little over a year ago, and we met there and started working out together. So, yep.
It's like a dumb question, but Gary and I would have no idea. So this is what I'm going to ask. We don't ride horses because we're not girls, I guess. I know, but I say that because every one of my friends in West Virginia, every one of their daughters they ride a horse, they show horses. It's a world that I don't have daughters, so I'm not into it. But does that help in anything with jiu-jitsu? I don't know. Does it, like, because you got to hold your legs tight or something? Does it do anything that correlates? I have no earthly idea. Does it, or is it just a cool thing to do?
I mean, I love it. It's something I've done for years, but it does correlate in some ways. I have insanely strong thighs. Like when I try to kill people, or if I'm going into half guard or anything on a bottom half, like I have a vice grip with my legs, and it's helped a little bit balance wise. Like when you're fighting stand up, you know, or when you're standing and somebody's playing open guard on the bottom or X guard or anything, it helps because I tend to keep my hips forward and my shoulders back from riding.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, her posture, you know, from riding, especially from growing up riding English as opposed to Western, her posture is really good, especially when passing. So it definitely helps.
So what does that mean? English opposed to Western?
So English is kind of just, for in layman's term, very like straight up and uptight and holding on tight and shoulders back, and then Western's a little more relaxed. So, but when you learn how to,
it would probably be English riders because we're uptight and
weird. You kind of have to have cheeks clenched.
Well, that's kind of similar to Gary and I.
Yeah. I can tell.
Now, so with the, well, I guess we could go into, you guys met at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So Margo, you've been doing jiu-jitsu a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, about 8 years.
Okay. And where do you guys do jiu-jitsu at?
Palm Beach Gardens Martial Arts on North Lake Boulevard in Palm Beach Gardens. So it's great. The coach Igor is from Renato Tavares in Vero, and then Natasha started at Fight Sports. So we kind of get the best of both worlds.
Can I just say, are you drinking whiskey out of a wine glass?
I might be. Is that a faux pas?
That's amazing.
I'm a guy, and a glass is a glass, and if I can put whiskey in it, that's what I drink it out of.
I really think it should be a red Solo cup.
I'm okay with that too. It's whatever. Listen, I could be 100% gangster and just get it and drink it out of the bottle too.
Yeah, that's true. You should do that actually.
Do that.
Nobody and nobody should talk about it. Just do it, and like nobody mentions a word about it.
Yeah, and then when somebody does ask about it, be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
You should start with two as well. You know, one that's full and one that's got like a quarter left, and start with the full one and then with the empty one.
Switch it halfway through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Butch, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Red Bull and vodka.
Oh God.
But earlier I was drinking Four Locos. Do you know what a Four Loco is?
Oh my God, why? Who chooses that?
Exactly. Because I get to. That's what I don't know. Because I want to black out and just not remember anything. That's why I'm drinking Four Loco.
What?
It's kind of a good idea. It's a good idea. She's
okay. Yeah.
So most people in West Virginia know what a Four Loco is, because they were banned for a long time because people are robbing banks and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just in Miami, as you know, and that Rolling Loud thing was going on, and they served Four Locos nonstop at that Rolling Loud hip hop festival, which I thought was amazing, which was great. But yeah, so that's what I was warning you ahead of time. Before you guys got on, I drank a bunch of water, ate a pizza. I'm trying to do my best to be somewhat normal. I'm already slurring my speech a little bit. It's a little bit crazy. So
Abby's been slurring her speech all day, and we have no idea why. I think she had a stroke.
No, might be having a stroke.
Yeah.
Well, Gary and we do that because we're not used to talking to girls, and it kind of freaks us out. So we have to drink a lot, and then it gets all kind of weird, you know.
Well, we're kind of the most manly girls you're gonna meet, so it's basically we're guys.
I literally had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, because I don't remember where we were, but I saw this guy running down the road, walking down the road, and he was walking like he was 400 pounds of pure muscle, you know, like a bodybuilder, but he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was like a small guy, but he was older, and he looked like he had been in construction or something, you know, kind of walked like he was hurting. And I looked at him and I was like, I'd be friends with that guy. He looks at me, he's like, you are lost in a room full of women, but we put you in a room full of men and you will be friends with all of them because you just pull out your Leatherman. You're like, look, guys, a Leatherman.
Yeah. He walks like that too.
Yeah. Well, that's good though. That's what we don't know how to dumb it down for girls. We get kind of confused, which is good that you guys are on our level. That's what I said. It made me less nervous. Like,
yeah.
Which is good. So, well, Gary, because you're better at asking questions to pretty girls than I am. So go ahead and ask a question, Gary.
I don't know how that happened, but yeah. No, so it seems like we'll go back to the podcast a little bit. It seems like it's just conversation and kind of like talking about experiences, and you guys kind of, it's just talking about whatever's going on in life for the most part, right?
Yeah, we kind of just flow. What sucks though is that we're kind of getting started and we're both so busy because we've been competing so much.
Yeah.
So literally by the time we have any time to even sit down, first of all, it takes an hour to set everything up. And then we talk for about an hour and a half. We usually lose all of the audio, ruin the video, and then have to start over. So we've actually probably done about 5 or 6 of them and lost all of the audio for each one because we are not technology people. My friend Jimmy's probably going to help us next time because he does music and all that stuff, but it's been a disaster because we're rushing through everything. But Pans is coming up, so she's doing Pans. I may or may not do Pans, and then after that we can focus a little bit more on the podcast, and you know, instead of training every single day. So we've ruined everything. But the recordings that we have done, it's just us just flowing, just talking about whatever.
And we'll sometimes sit down with a topic,
Adventures.
you know, like we want to hit this at some point, but honestly, when we get into the flow of things, we don't want to like jump into a topic that has nothing to do with it, except for Margot does. She likes to do these. She likes to segue. Stories. Yeah. Except it's not a segue. She'll go, by the way, how we were talking earlier about something that we were definitely not talking about.
Well, and you're not alone in that either, because me and Butch are kind of going through the same growing pains. This is our 11th episode now. And we have the same thing where it's like every once in a while, like we have an idea of where we want the podcast to go, but then things will turn, just in conversation, things take a turn and you're not sure exactly what we're going to be talking about. Yeah. And then trying to wrangle it back, like, oh, I wanted to make sure that I talked about this thing that's happening or whatever, and trying to wrangle it back. So I've made the same. So anyway, we were supposed to be talking about this.
Yeah. How did we get on the cow udders? We were talking about jujitsu.
Back to the shit we were supposed to talk to.
And then I always try to, like, when I tell like a personal story, like a horrible, hilarious story, I think in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to like mention who the story is about because of their privacy. And then I just talk about who it is and everyone knows who I'm talking about. It's like completely embarrass myself. So we tell lots of embarrassing stories.
Yeah. And we try not to keep it too centered around us. Like we want to tell our stories and our journey and we feel like we can engage and connect with people that way. But we want it to be more about the broader parts of life, I guess, a little bit about, you know, not we built this, but hey, we sat down and built this, but you can do things like this too. Or, you know, we talk about whatever's happening in jiu-jitsu at the moment, or we want to talk about a specific fight or something, you know, we want it to be broader. So it's not just us talking about us, but
or just jiu-jitsu. It's about everything. Yeah. So
it's right. And that I want to feel like a conversation with friends. Sorry.
No. And I was going to say, and that's the thing is like, you don't want to kind of be hamstrung into, hey, we're, you know, even though it's the Jitzchickz, we're not hamstrung into talking about jiu-jitsu.
The coughing and the hacking is not us. It leaves a bunch of dogs in the room, by the way.
That's all right. Hey, if my dogs start barking upstairs, then I apologize as well.
So what do you? We've tried. We've listened to some clips of some of your podcasts. What do you guys so far? Your 11th episode. What's like the most that you guys talk about? Like we've heard some clips, but like what's like your main focus? Just mainly all martial arts or jiu-jitsu specifically, or?
No, I think we're with you. Like we're trying to figure out the same thing because, and Gary and I have talked about that recently. Like a lot of times before you guys got on, for example, we'll sit and talk a little bit and try to figure out what direction we want to go. But we could have it like at one side and kind of like you guys, I think you should have a niche kind of like I have that feeling like, hey, this is the niche. But then at the same time, like we're called the restaurant, and I don't want it to be all about jiu-jitsu because we have friends that do, you know, Muay Thai, that do MMA, that do stand-up, and we have friends that are comedians. I have a friend that, you know, was the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. There's like a bunch of people I want to talk to. And really, I think, you know, kind of the direction that we're trying to go is the same thing. It's just talk to interesting people, right? But at the same time, I have kind of a common theme, and I don't know what that is yet, quite honestly. At 11, like maybe we'll figure it out, or maybe we'll do just like you guys are doing. Is like, I don't want, like maybe like you're saying, you don't want to be pigeonholed into a certain thing. And as one thing, I do think we should talk about jiu-jitsu sometime because that's what we do. And then at the other time, I'm like, well, if I have a non-jiu-jitsu guy on, like we have a good friend, John Marshall, that's a lawyer that he does jiu-jitsu with us. But whenever he's on the podcast, and he's done a few, it's zero to do with jiu-jitsu. Like he's saying, hey, these are the things I learned in life, and you know, things that can help you, and how to prioritize your life. And you know, like I think that's valuable, right? So I don't want to be, I think it's very similar. I don't want to be pigeonholed into that. Maybe we're heavy on jiu-jitsu because that's the common ground. But Gary also does stand up and Muay Thai, and so do I. And you know, there's going to be occasions we talk about that stuff, right? Or obviously you guys do jiu-jitsu too, but like I would have, you know, we got an interesting perspective. So it's hard, right? Like, I don't know, you know, I mean, like in the podcasts I listen to, I don't know if somebody asked me, like, why do you like that? I wouldn't say, well, it's because it's this or it's that, right? I don't know. You know, I like all kinds of stuff. And most of those people talk to all kinds of different people, right?
I think it's cool how many, like you're saying, like your friend's a lawyer, like how many, you know, very intelligent professionals happen to do jiu-jitsu. And it kind of like shows you what an array of different people train. So when you do talk about jiu-jitsu, there is a lot of stuff about life just in general that, you know, coincides with all that, all different walks of life. So
it does. Cool. I think you guys agree too. Like jujitsu for me, and I'll just speak of me besides Gary, but it made me a better person, right? Like it translates into my life, because sometimes I'm like, obviously I'm drinking crazy right now, but like if I'm going tomorrow and I'm gonna have a good workout, I'm like, man, I can't eat like crap and I can't drink, because tomorrow everybody's gonna kick my ass if I show up like this, right? And so that kind of makes me a better person. And the different things, I gotta make decisions how I'm eating, how I'm drinking, who I'm hanging out with, or what I'm doing because of jujitsu. Like, so I think that's the common ground, although we can talk about other things, right? And speaking of that, too,
I'm
sorry.
We actually had a conversation. Sorry, the dogs are going insane.
It's okay.
We had a conversation about that this morning, about how, especially at work and everything. Like, I worked at a store for a long time that just really stressed me out. Hold on a second. No. Sorry. We're stopping the dogs from killing each other right now. Can you grab that toy out of her? Yeah. No, don't. I'm sorry.
How many dogs?
We got Zebra here. Okay. The dog goes crazy.
Right, we have a dog that she's dog sitting, and
That's Duncan. Here's Duncan.
Our two are pretty calm. They'll like chill out and not make much noise, but she's like, let me pant
Sorry.
in your faces and cry at you.
Well,
yeah, so
that's the dog that I teabag you guys, just so you know. That's the one that just made the appearance, right? Yeah, that's the famous one.
Oh yeah, so I was saying about this morning how, we both have really stressful jobs, and I worked at a job for 14 years that was extremely stressful, and I would go home crying every night, just out of pure frustration and anger, and just people being rude to you and everything. And ever since I started jujitsu, like, I realized I have so much more control over my emotions, and I know it's kind of cliche, but just like knowing I could choke you if I wanted to makes me so much more agreeable.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's the same for guys, right? Like, because I think as guys, there's a lot of testosterone flowing, and everybody's trying to do this ego thing, whose dick's bigger, like bullshit, right? And then it's nice when you can be like, I don't really care, because at the end of the night, I'm going to get it over with. Like, it might not be Gary, like if I'm mad at Gary, but when I go, I'm going to get my aggressions out, and it's going to make me a nicer person. And then if somebody cuts me off after jiu-jitsu, I'm like, just go ahead. Don't worry about it. Where if they cut me off before jiu-jitsu, I might want to try to kill them, right? It's a different, and you guys experience the same thing. There's something about that. It just gets it out of your system. You don't have to prove anything anymore, and you're more apt, like, because if somebody talks trash to me, like after I've had a good workout, I could be like, they'd be like, I'll kick your ass. I'm like, yeah, you probably would, right? Like, even though I don't believe that, but it's, what I mean? I'm just more relaxed.
Just de-escalate. It doesn't matter anymore. You don't feel the need to be so aggressive. And I get that. Like, I work in construction. I work and not that it matters whether it's male or female dominated, but I work in a male dominated industry. And I only bring that up to say, it's like you said, it's all about the testosterone. It's all about whose dick is bigger, who can shout louder, who can curse more, And so before I started jiu-jitsu, I was really struggling to get into workouts that I enjoyed. I kind of got out of lifting for a lot of years, and I wasn't enjoying my workouts anymore, and I didn't have any good outlets. And I would go be on these job sites, and I'd be trying to work with these people, and they're just aggressive, and they want to prove that they're better and that they're bigger and tougher and louder than me or whatever.
And everybody wants control, in the business world. So
and I started jiu-jitsu, and it was like, nothing matters. You can come up and scream in my face. And whereas I tended before jiu-jitsu to be a little bit of a hothead and to kind of, I bow back up at you, I don't like having to back down. Now it's like, it's not backing down for me. It's just de-escalating the situation, because I fight every night. I have no desire to fight you physically or verbally,
Yeah. When secretly in your head, you're like, I've already submitted you 10 times. And it's, this conversation, you already died. So let's just move on. Like, I know how this day would end. No,
it's not experienced. It's, I'm not the person. I know if I walk into a room of 100 people, the chances of me being able to take 10 of them, out of 10 in a fight, is very low. But it's nice to know that I can defend myself, and I do think to myself, when I have these guys that bow up at me, and I think, man, you don't even know what fighting is. You may have gotten a couple street scraps maybe in your lifetime if you're lucky. But, I fight every night, and obviously it's not MMA, I'm not striking, but still it's nice to know that I could get somebody to the ground and take dominant position if I ever had to. And I pray to God I never have to,
But you also, it's the mentality too. Like, she's a lot less stressed out and a lot less anxious than she was when she first started. you know, being in the construction industry and being a woman, you know, everyone's on your back all the time. And so now she just lets it roll off her shoulders like it's nothing.
And I held a lot of anger for a lot of years. Yeah. Just in general, you know, I think a lot of people do. If you don't have an outlet, I think everybody's an angry person by nature, except for like maybe 3 people in the world, you know?
Well, society, everything's frustrating these days. Yeah. You know, people are overworked, underpaid, and everyone's having to pay bills. And, you know, especially when you're a young woman, you're doing it all on your own, you know, so it's definitely a good stress reliever. And, you know, especially with COVID, with all the gyms closing down and everything, like you've seen a lot of jujitsu people who are like really uptight now because they haven't trained in a while.
So this is just a random question I was thinking about. Is it like you see on TV, like working the construction thing, are people hitting on you or calling you guys all the time because you're there or because you're not? That's more like them being on site and somebody walking by. Is a little bit different, or are those guys more aggressive? And I know that doesn't mean all construction people. We have a ton of them, but I'm just curious. Just random.
Is toxic masculinity real on the construction site? That's what Butch wants to know.
Toxic masculinity isn't real to begin with.
Yeah. So you know, I feel like, and we've had so many conversations like this. I laugh. All these people who say it's toxic masculinity. No. It's lack of masculinity.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, I've never had a true, good, strong, masculine man come up to me and have a decent interaction with me. The ones who come up and have weird interactions with me, they're all these, for lack of a better term, betas that are coming up and trying to act like they're all big and bad, you know? And it's like, dude, come on, I probably have more testosterone than you. Like,
which is true. But she kind of runs the show in her company, so the men have to be respectful because she's
I wouldn't say that at all.
But she's you're the supervisor, you're more of a boss to them, so they can't really be jerks to her. I mean, because then they're kind of in trouble at work.
Somewhat, for the most part, I kind of let it roll off my back. I've had a lot of weird experiences. I had a guy give me an Eiffel Tower once as a gift. She doesn't know what an Eiffel Tower is. Aside,
I was going to say, are you sure? Are you sure that?
As a you don't want to see that? She doesn't.
She's still 21 years old.
A statue.
He gave her a statue. An Eiffel Tower when 2 guys and 1 girl. Never mind.
Yeah. So Margot is extremely like well versed in the world, and I'm so innocent.
Don't make me sound like that. I'm not that well versed. I just know what shit is.
He just knows what an Eiffel Tower is. That's
I know what an Eiffel Tower is. She has no idea.
Like, are you sure somebody gave you that as a gift? Are you sure?
Yeah.
And I've had weird. I had the other day. I was talking about it with one of the other superintendents, and he said, "You know, it's funny how when you have a woman on site, it's like a lot of the men can't help themselves but say something to you. Like, if I'll be walking across site, and a guy will just go, 'Man, you're so beautiful,' and it's like they can't help themselves, you know. And I usually look at them, and I'm like a freaking, I forget what the kind of lizard is that has a beard and it goes and it like beards up, and I feel like that's me. I'm like, back off.
Dragon, is that right? I don't know either, but like something like that. Yeah, kimono dragon.
But they literally have like this beard thing that pops up, you know.
But that's a good point though. Like why do people do that at construction site? Like at normal, if you walked past somebody, they wouldn't say that, right? In normal life, but for some reason in that atmosphere.
Yes, because I'm the only one walking, and it depends. Like if I'm walking by myself, I get it all the time. If I'm walking with another guy, I never get it pretty much. Like everybody's too afraid to say anything in front of other people, but they'll say it to me alone, you know. And most of the time, like I'm a sarcastic asshole, so most of the time I'll say something sarcastic back to you. Like it doesn't matter to me. I laugh it off at the end of the day.
So does that ever work? Like when somebody is like, "Hey, baby," blah blah blah. Does that ever? You're like,
"That's what it makes me fall at their feet." I have many suitors because
See, my strategy is, you know, I was raised primarily by my dad, who has the most disgusting humor ever. So I start off every conversation being disgusting just as a barrier to start. It backfires a lot though.
Yeah, she finds the weirdos.
I try to make it as weird and uncomfortable as possible, so people are like, okay, right off the bat, I'm gonna leave her alone.
Well, it's definitely a way to sort things out, right? Like you can get the people who are going to be easily disgusted or be like, like, I don't want those people in my circle anyway. Like you can't, it's an easy way to weed those people out, and I think we all do that a little bit. I don't think that's necessarily just women. Like for me, like, and I don't, publicly, I probably don't do it as much. I'm obviously, I think we're all a little bit fake when we're on something that's on the internet or whatever. I think we're a little bit fake because but to my friends, like whenever it comes time to joking and stuff, I say the worst thing because I think that's funny.
We just had that conversation this morning. So our team, we have like a disgusting sense of humor, and we're lucky because I hear of a lot of women who go to a lot of gyms who are like insulted because somebody said something gross. So when there's like a group of guys, and this has been like since high school, and everyone's telling a joke and it's getting worse and worse and worse and more disgusting, I'm the one at the very end that says something and everyone's like, okay, no, too far, I'm leaving. like people will say things that are gross and then I will horrify everybody.
Yeah, but and that's I wonder because it honestly, like you kind of sound like a lot of the female friends that I have that have been in the military, and they kind of have the same experience as you guys, like as far as like they don't believe in toxic masculinity either. They think that it's just a lack of masculinity. The guys who are confident in themselves, that aren't worried about whether or not they seem masculine or that they're coming off as a man, those guys usually don't act weird around them.
Yeah, that's why we like jujitsu, because there's some people have ego, but then you can weed out the people that don't have that ego because people are humbled every day. So it's a little bit more of a masculine environment where people can be humbled and they can also feel their own strength and their own power at the same time, both mentally and emotionally and physically. And we like being around people like that because reality in jiu-jitsu, reality is in your face. It's not some off in the distance dream. And we were having a conversation about how during competitions, you're in this big room and all you see is these men and these women in gis warming up and getting ready. And where else in the world, can you look at her? Sorry. I'm sorry, the dog is like going insane and my neighbors are gonna go crazy. Go ahead. We're gonna be like up and down, sorry. But you're sitting in a room full of a bunch of people who are literally getting ready to physically fight each other. So how often do you really experience that at the supermarket or at Walmart or, at Target? You don't go in there and you're surrounded by people who are literally about to attack each other. So it's a whole different world. And I think it really puts reality in people's faces. And that's why we like being in that environment, because, the masculinity is real and it creates a healthier dynamic, I think. Sorry, one of our dogs is insane.
I mean, you're a purple belt, correct?
Yeah.
So you've probably been at it, what, 6 to 8 years, something like, I'm just guessing.
8 years. The first 3 years I worked 2 jobs. So I worked about 16 hours a day, except for 2 days a week. So I really only did 2 days a week for the first 3 years. So I was a little slow getting there. But the last couple of years I've been able to focus a little bit more on jiu-jitsu. So technically 8 years, but yeah. Like kind of I've been a purple belt like 1.5 years now, 2 years maybe.
That's the speech that I give everybody too, is that jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, right? Learning moves is the one part, but it's like, what happens in life? Do you change jobs? Do you change relationships? Do you get injuries? Do you get this, you get that, right? Like, that's why it takes so long. It's hard to be consistent at a level where you're going to keep learning, right? Like, I mean, we've all went through it, whether it's injuries or it's the word. Like, I hate when people at my gym date each other because I know that I'm going to lose at least one of them. Right?
Yeah.
It's like something. I'm like,
jealous.
Something, but yeah, it's like I just promoted 2 guys to purple belt the other day, and they've been there forever. But it was like, it was just on and off, right? Like, it's just jobs, life, having babies, just so much stuff. Right? And but if you look at it, I think some of them have been blue belts for like 6 to 8 years, right? But it's not because they weren't good. It was because like they weren't there for 6 to 8 years. It was that was the time span, but on the mat was probably only a year or two if they were actually coming, you know. I mean, and that's what people that don't do what we do, that they don't understand that. Like you're not going to get handed a belt. I mean, you could at some places, you can shop around, but obviously you guys are at a good gym and it doesn't matter. You're going to have to still show up and beat somebody and perform. And especially if you're competing, both you guys are competing, that can go either way. Sometimes you get promoted faster because you're winning, and sometimes you get promoted slower because they're like, you know what I mean? It just depends on how your coach. Yeah. I mean, so go ahead.
I feel like you know, a lot of people, a big thing in jiu-jitsu, especially with the younger men, you know, guys who are in their 20s and stuff, everybody, like, they start jiu-jitsu and then all they do is complain about, like, I don't know why I don't have my blue belt yet. I don't know why I have my purple belt yet. And it's like, what's the hurry? When I started jiu-jitsu, the day I started jiu-jitsu, I realized I'm going to do this for the rest of my life as long as my body works. There's no rush unless you're going to be some sort of professional and you think you're going to make money in jiu-jitsu, which you won't, you know, unless you own 5 gyms or something like that. You know, it's very difficult. It really has to be your passion if you're going to make a business out of it, you know? So
not the money people are thinking, unless you're Gordon Ryan, right?
What?
I'm saying, unless you're Gordon Ryan, you're not making the money that people are thinking. Even when you're making money, you're still probably scraping by. It's not what people think at all, right?
Even your UFC belt in the back, you know, even professional fighters who are the biggest in the world still, you know, I mean, look at Conor McGregor, like, he makes a ton of money, but the person that's right under him is, you know, still, I mean, you make good money, but you're not Jeff Bezos, you know.
Well, and even like I don't remember the name of the girl yet last night who won, Mackenzie something, I don't remember. Anyway, she won.
Mackenzie buys.
Yeah, thank you. She ended up getting fight of the night, and she said when she finished that match that, you know, they put the mic in front of her, and she said, I took out a loan to even afford to be here. You know, like, she's, and not that she's top of the UFC yet, she's just got in. I think she's had one other fight, but still, you think like UFC is the pinnacle, you know, you make it to the UFC, you're golden. And it's like, not really. So
it's kind of like, what's the hurry of getting the next belt or being promoted or, you know, what? And meanwhile, people, you know, they're like, I've been training for a year and I should have a blue belt by now. And it's like, well, then you should have started 5 years ago. You know, like, people start jujitsu and all of a sudden they're like, well, now I have to advance really fast. I'm like, well, then why didn't you start when you were 12? So
there's an interesting thing that happens in jiu-jitsu that doesn't happen in other sports. And that is, like, you can, as a white belt, you can attend a seminar with people who are at the top of the food chain. You don't get to do that in basketball. If you started playing pickup basketball in the street, it was like, well, I guess I'm going to go hang out with LeBron James today and pay $90 for a seminar with LeBron James. That just doesn't happen. But I can go and pay $90 and travel an hour and go see Gordon Ryan at his next seminar. And I think because we can get so close to the top, just and not even necessarily so close as like talent level, but like so close in the sense that we can meet those people, right? I think it gives us a false sense of it's not that far away.
Yes, exactly.
And not to discourage anybody, because hard work always pays off. And listen, if you got the talent and the time and the genetics and the mentality, the top is there for you. It's going to take a lot of hard work. Gordon Ryan and Javier Lovato Jr., those guys got to the top because of a lot of hard work. So it's not that they didn't do it the right way. They put in all the work that any other professional athlete put in.
Well, even look at all the fight to wins and all the sub-stars and all that stuff. You have little blue belts who are on a stage that are putting on a show for people. Like, it's not just the black belts that are like kind of becoming popular on social media. It's little white belts and blue belts and purple belts too that are making a name for themselves. So I think people want to get there kind of fast, and that's why people get frustrated. Yeah,
and I think that gives us a false sense that it's not that far away. Yeah, but it still comes down to, did you put in the work? And that's really what it is. We kind of had this conversation. Me and Butch have had this conversation a couple times, but like, you know, like the blue belt blues, and why do we lose so many blue belts in jiu-jitsu, and why do they disappear so quick? And I think it's a couple things. I think one, if you've spent 2 to 3 years getting your blue belt, and you get to blue belt and you think about like, what do I want in jiu-jitsu? I want a black belt. And then you're like, oh, I guess I still got 8 or 9 years left before I get my black belt. Do I really want to stick with it?
Yeah.
And if you're belt chasing, that makes it kind of hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And then 2, you have a lot of hobbyists that come in, and that their intention is to, hey, I just want to learn some self-defense. I want to get some skills. And I'm not sure of the lineage that you guys have. I know, Butch has a Hoist Gracie lineage that he started with. I started with a Helsing Gracie camp, and the lineage there says that a blue belt is a black belt on the streets. And I firmly believe that if you're a blue belt, 90% of the people that you meet, you probably be okay against. And so if you're there for self-defense, after you get that blue belt, well, why am I here now? Yeah. I've gotten my self-defense. So there's got to be something more, kind of like what you're saying. There's got to be something more to drive you past blue belt.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things, like you can get to purple belt, which Margot, you're there now. Mm-hmm. I hope you're on your way, Abby, but
she's
don't stop. But once you get to purple belt is that belt that's like
right in the middle.
At that time, you have all of the skills and you have all of the knowledge. I mean, give or take, that a black belt has. It's really just honing your game and like streamlining that into your own jiu-jitsu and cleaning everything up. That you're probably skipping steps on an arm bar from guard. You're probably skipping steps on the omoplata, and it's just tightening, cleaning everything up.
Yeah.
And so if you can get to purple belt, I think that's your catalyst that like black belt's coming.
Yeah. And Rogan and Jocko did a podcast. I think it was from a few years ago now, but I just listened to it the other day, and they said one of the things they said in it is if they could tell lower belts anything or purple belts anything, would be to all the purple belts, you're a black belt who just needs more time in the mats.
Yeah.
And that was honestly really encouraging to me, because it doesn't matter what belt I'm at, but at the same time, I want to be able to get good, right? And the better you get, the more you progress, you're going to eventually go up in belt rank, right? And that was really encouraging to me to think, black belt seems so far away right now, but I really just have to make it purple belt. If I survive blue belt, I'm golden. Once you make it to purple belt, it's really just years and time on the mats.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I also, with this whole COVID thing in the last year, I guess I kind of view life from my own perspective, and I don't always know what the general public is thinking, but I realize with all of this COVID and the masks and everything, how short-sighted and short-term focused the majority of society is. And I guess I never really thought of it that way. So I guess, with karate, you'll get your black belt in 3 or 4 years. With taekwondo, it's a couple of years so you get a black belt. With jiu-jitsu, you can be 10 years, you could be 20 years, it could take a long time. So I think what happens is a lot of people who are in a hurry to get the next belt, they're short-sighted and they're like, I just want to get there. The day I started, I said to myself, someday I'm going to get my black belt, whether I'm 40, whether I'm 50, whether I'm 60, so I think some of it teaches people to be think more long-term. And like we were talking about your friend who's a lawyer, like professionals who go to school for a very long time, like you have to be kind of look at the long game in order to get to a black belt. So you'll see those people who are short-sighted make it to blue belt and quit. And then the people who think of life in terms of long-term and forever, those are the people that make it to black belt. To me, black belt is where it begins. So, and I've thought of that since day one. So maybe that's just my mentality.
I'm a black belt, but that's the thing. It's speaking of one, right? I feel like it was scary being a black belt because I have every belt we have, you have a target, right? But now I've got other gyms that may be walking in from vacation that they want to come. And I feel like I'm semi-obligated to roll with these people. And then when they leave, they're going to either say like that gym was legit or not based on how I did, right? It's
pressure.
Yeah, it kind of sucks, right?
Yeah, we were just talking today about how black belts get injured more than anybody because everyone attacks them because they want to do good against them. And they got to, stand up for themselves all the time. So it's got to be tough.
Yeah. It is. I'm sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sure you're in a hard position. I see it happen all the time. Even to not just black belts, happens at every belt level basically. But especially as you get into higher belts, purple, brown, and black belts, you'll have these roles with people where I'll watch them and I'll be seeing the black belt or whatever belt it is go gentle. You know, you're like, I'm not gonna sub this guy. I'm just gonna let him work. And they get up and they're like, yeah, I didn't get tapped once. And it's like,
no,
that must suck sometimes nice. To you when you're sitting there like, dude, I could have, you know, like I could have done anything in that role. I was trying to be nice, you know.
No, and actually, Jimmy and I had this,
so far above them.
we had this conversation before you guys came on because we were talking about rolling with some people and that either people that caught us or could have caught us, and then how you act afterwards. Because sometimes you're exactly right. Like, and I've had people talk to me and say, well, I didn't get tapped that round, so I did really good, not knowing that round, they're like, I'm just gonna let this guy work and see what happens, right? And then it kind of rubs you wrong because they're like, yeah. You hear them talking and they're like, well, yeah, he couldn't tap me. And then you're like, I'm gonna fuck that guy up this extent, right? But then you got to catch yourself and say no, because look, it means a lot to that. You know, I mean, it just depends on how your ego is. I'm 44 now. I tend to think I'm on the downside of my ego. It's going the opposite way where I'm like, yeah, if that means so much to this person, it doesn't matter, right? But it does suck. So I'm 44, just like I said, and this year I've been injured more than any other year in my entire life. It's just nonstop. I tore my bicep tendon and got a bunch of stitches. It just keeps going and going. But a lot of it is just what you said. Like, we're gonna get everybody's best round every time, and that's fine. Like, I'm used to it to a certain degree, but it doesn't mean that every day, right? Like, not all of us go to the gym. You're not getting your A game every day. Like, I go and, you know, I have a regular job just like you guys, and I work all day. I work exactly until it's time to go to the gym, and then I go to the gym, and sometimes I have no energy. And then those guys have an abundance. They just took their pre-workout. They're ready to smash somebody, and you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, this is horrible. But at the same time, it is, you know, like, it's part of the thing. You know what I mean? It's you know, it's kind of the good and bad. Just like you said, I can't complain. It's the good and bad of it, and it's what's going to make me a better person. But like, since you guys brought him up a few times since we said, that's why my friend John, his name's John, and he's the lawyer that we keep bringing up. But the reason he loves jiu-jitsu, because he's talking about, this is everyday life. His life is, as a lawyer, he's getting beat down every day. Somebody hates him and they're trying to beat him, and their client wants to win, and you're going to take knocks, and you're going to have good days and bad days. And he's like, that's why I love jiu-jitsu. This reminds me of everyday life, that I wake up the next day and I have to be a better person, and I have to brush myself off when I lose and just move on to the next thing, just like we do. Like, you could, and you guys have seen it, you could slap the mat and cuss when somebody beats you, or you can slap hands and go again and see what happens and try to get better. And maybe you get tapped the next time, but the next time you do better, and you know what I mean? And then you just move on. And to his point, that's why we're good friends with him, is that it reminds me that is life, right? Like, when I go to work and you know, somebody cusses me out, a customer cusses me out, it's like, okay, how do I react from this situation? Do I get to make a better person? You know, how do I become a black belt person in real life, right?
Exactly.
And that's why I think we're all in, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Like, that's what we're trying to convey when we talk to other people. I just want to convey what it's like to do jiu-jitsu. To do jiu-jitsu, it translates to my whole life. I want to be a better person every day. I want to be a better person to my wife and my kids and all those things. And some of these things I can learn from here. And quite honestly, I do bad a lot of times, you know, but then I know from jiu-jitsu that I can do better, right? Like, it's like, okay, I had a bad day. Let's move over, you know, let's reevaluate, you know, look at what I did wrong and go back at it tomorrow. And that goes, I think everybody knows that listens to Rogan and Jocko, like, that thing good, like, right? Like, when he's like, oh, something went wrong. Well, good. How do I recalibrate, get better, and go back after it? There's nothing better than that. I'm not nearly as good as actually repeating that mantra as those people, but if I could sit and play that in my car every day and be awesome, that would be wonderful. I'm assuming those guys do it, but I'm betting you they're much like us. They've got to remind themselves that they've got to get it back together, right? You know, I like to picture Jocko just being a badass all seconds of every day, but I'm sure that he's not, right? Like, I'm sure that he goes up and down just like the rest of us, you know?
Well, that's funny that you mentioned that, because, like, speaking of like toxic masculinity, my favorite part about it, you know, everyone thinks Jocko's like this big alpha male type of guy. My favorite part about him is that he's humble and can laugh at himself, and he's able to let himself be weak sometimes and let himself be vulnerable and learn. And that comes, a lot of that comes with jujitsu and learning how to, like you said, to deal with getting knocked down and to be a better person by, you know, being able to handle the failure. Sometimes you learn most in your failure. So meanwhile, my ringtone is Jocko screaming, "You gotta fight." That's my ringtone on my phone. So every time I wake up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym every day, or like 5:30, the first thing I hear is Jocko's voice saying, "Not tomorrow, today, you gotta fight." So it helps me wake up.
So you go to morning class tonight.
Sorry, the dog is going crazy.
That's all right. Yeah. So what time is your first class? What time's your first jiu-jitsu class? Is it pretty early? 6 o'clock in the morning?
I go to the regular gym at 5:40, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I work all day. And then sometimes I'll run after work. And then I go to the jiu-jitsu afterwards. I've been kind of on a weird fitness kick lately because as we're talking about how I trained for 8 years, and in my mind, I've been advancing quite a bit, but I was overweight for a couple of years and everything in my head, I couldn't physically do. And I just woke up one day and said, that's it, getting in shape. So now I've been really working hard. I lost 43 pounds in like 4 or 5 months. And now I feel like I'm at a purple belt level. That's why I've been competing. So that's.
Well, randomly, not in a creepy way, Gary and I were talking about that before we got on here, just because you posted those pictures recently.
No, it was 100% creepy. Don't let him talk about it. We were 100% Facebook stalking you, and like,
if only you could sniff things through the computer, right?
Yeah.
See, I told you I was gonna make it weirder.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm listening to your timeline correctly, then you're already in jiu-jitsu when you dealt with all this, when you decided you're going to get in better shape or different shape or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, I started jiu-jitsu and I was about 134 pounds, and in skinny fat. I would work out and stuff, but I never really ate super healthy, and I just had a lot of stress as a white belt, as a blue belt. I had everything in my head, jiu-jitsu wise. I understood everything in my head, but physically, like I couldn't sit up to get a Kimura. I couldn't move fast enough to take somebody's back. I was still, no matter how big I was always very squirrely because I'm small and I can kind of move in tight positions. But just a lot of stress in the last couple of years in my life. And I kind of just woke up one day and said, forget it. I got to get back to I got up to 174 pounds at 5'1". That's a lot. And then I just had a lot of stuff happen last year and decided I've got to change something. And I don't even remember when or why I decided to start. I just meal prepped like a month's worth of really healthy food. And the first month I lost like 22 pounds and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to keep going. Mm-hmm. And then just kept going. And now I can move. So everything that's been in my head for years, my coaches can see it now that I can physically do it now. So now they're actually physically able to see how much knowledge I actually have, which is another thing about people being frustrated with getting to the next belt level is like, it's not so much about your performance and competing, but sometimes it's just about what's in the brain and how much you actually know. Let's
rewind just a little bit. And then I'm going to ask Abby the same question, but Morgan, what got you into jiu-jitsu and like, how did you get started? Why jiu-jitsu and not Thai bow or whatever it could be? Like, why jiu-jitsu? And really I may go off camera because I'm going to get more bourbon in my wine glass.
Awesome.
I like that he brought up Thai bow of all things. Like, do you guys even are you young enough or old enough to remember what Thai bow is? That was a big thing.
I'm old enough. Abby doesn't even know what Alice in Chains is. So
no, we're an Eiffel Tower for that matter, but yeah.
Oh God, you should hear some of the things that she says. I'm not even going to describe a blumpkin.
This is a common thing that I say something thinking that it's only, this is the definition that I know it as. It's a normal everyday word.
It's not.
And Margot's like, Abby, you can't say that in public.
Before we go back to Gary's question, because I never did find did they give you like a statue of an Eiffel Tower? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it was literally like a little
I got you now.
Statue that he bought at a random store and just was like, she will like this.
Which also probably could have been an innuendo and you probably didn't know.
It probably was.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's very okay. All right, let's go back to Gary's. I was still looking for the answer for that for a long time ago. I was like, how did she get this confused? I don't understand.
He got super excited when I finally just was like, fine, whatever, and walked away with it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm totally into Eiffel
Oh my
Towers.
God, you made me realize things now. I don't like it. I don't know if we can talk to them again.
Yeah.
Sorry. Duncan wants to, apparently, Duncan, look at the camera. He doesn't care. Okay.
Yeah.
He wants to be on film today.
Yeah.
So going back to your question, what got me into jujitsu was, and kind of the same thing that got me into, I've been riding motorcycles since I was about 18, 19 years old. And I'm kind of the type of person that everything's like this. Like if I have a job to do, I got to get it done. If I've got somewhere to be, I've got to go. Like I am a speed demon, pedal to the metal in everything that I do. And I went from a Harley, a regular cruiser. And one day I just decided to buy a sport bike. And I was going from like 0 to 90 miles an hour in like a half a second. And I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing. Everything quick is what I've needed in my life. And then I rode really fast motorcycles for a long time. So with jujitsu, I always kind of, like we said, I was always kind of agitated at work. And, my first day, my friend invited me to try a class, and I had all of these men that just literally put me into a pretzel and controlled everything and I'm pretty independent and I'm pretty fearless. So I'm not afraid of going out on the street at night and, like going down to the corner store to grab a beer and walk home. Not that I have a pretty good alertness about me, but I have a little bit too much of a lack of fear. So when these men were putting pressure on me and controlling everything that my body did, I realized how truly helpless I would be in a bad situation. And I said, I have to learn this, because if I'm ever in a bad situation, I'm dead. Like Tim Kennedy, when he teaches his class at Sheepdog Response, when he's on top of somebody in mount, he literally goes like this to their eyes and he says, I just ripped your eyes out. So in a real situation, you realize how helpless you are. And I said, I have to stick with this. First of all, I love, the challenge in my brain of having to think of this, but I also like knowing that I can learn enough to, at least in the worst case scenario, at least be able to defend myself enough to get away and escape and survive and live.
Abby, same question.
Yeah.
So you stuck with it though, because a lot of people don't though. I've seen this 100 times, right? Where new people come in, guys or girls, and that same situation happens, and their ego can't handle it, so they quit. I'm sure you guys have seen it too. So it's a credit to you guys. Everybody probably on this podcast, obviously, we're still doing jiu-jitsu, but it's like, it's not easy to do. It's like, it sounds perfectly fine, right? Yeah. It's not easy to do.
They don't want to admit to themselves how vulnerable they truly are, because I think a lot of people have fear of that. So they kind of put it out of their minds, and their ego, part of it is that their ego can't handle it. And then part of it is that, like, there is a real fear. Like, if I were to ever get attacked, some people like to walk around thinking I'll be okay. And they don't want to admit to themselves that you're not going to be okay. So they can't handle it. But I'm humble enough to be like, okay.
Very humble.
Yeah. No, I'm saying. No, I'm actually self-deprecating most of the time.
She's talking trash on you, huh?
Yeah.
Abby, same question.
So I worked in ranching and with horses for a lot of years, and I hit this point where I realized I was out of college. I'd been out of school for 2 years almost. And I just woke up one day and I was like, man, I don't want to do horses anymore. I love horses. I love them I love having them in my life. I have a mare that I own that is my world. I love her to death. But I was going to be broken by 30, which now, because of jiu-jitsu, I probably will be anyways.
Still will be, yeah.
But
you're broken now.
I decided I was going into construction, started in construction, moved to a new city. I didn't know anybody. And as an adult, it's very hard to meet people that have common interests to you. I'm in a new city. I don't party. I don't drink. I'm like the most boring person ever. And I started going to a gym, and I just couldn't find my rhythm working out. And I'm an athletic person. I've always done sports in some way. And I moved into a building, and my apartment was right over where several black belts lived. And they invited me to the gym a bunch of times. And it took me like a year. And finally one day I went in, and the first week Margot neon bellied me and would whisper to me, "Don't tap the pressure," while putting as much pressure as humanly possible on me.
Margot is just like you and
I. What? What did you say?
Just like Gary and I. That's the same thing. I'm like, don't tap. You're going to be a pussy. Don't do it. You're going to regret this.
Because my first day of jujitsu, I had two grown men like literally dig their knee into my sternum. And that's what made me come back to jujitsu, because I was like, if I can handle this, then I know that I want to do this. So I did it. So now I do it to everybody because I'm really mean. And I'm also taking out my frustrations on other people.
And honestly, part of the reason
slightly mean. Yeah.
A huge part of the reason that I stuck with it is you can't tell here because we have like the same length torso, but I have long legs. So when we stand up, there's like a 7-inch height difference. I'm 5'1", and I am the most awkward person by name. I am literally the awkward giraffe. Like, they started calling me that at the gym, just offhand, and I've been called that my whole life. My neighbors got used to hearing me trip up the stairs every day and hit my metal Yeti cup into the balcony. Like, they knew that sound was me coming home from work. I trip up the stairs like every day. And I was like, man, I want to be more coordinated. I don't want to be this awkward person who, and I still am, but my coordination has improved incredibly, my balance, everything. Like, I'm a completely different person than a year ago, even, you know?
So it was just the nagging of your, I'm sorry, Butch, but I was going to say it's just the nagging of your black belt neighbors.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'd always wanted to try some kind of combat sport, but honestly, I was really nervous because in the horse industry, there's like two sides of it. There's the really friendly, like, yeah, come join us, have fun, jump into it side. And then there's the very cliquey side. And I was really afraid that if I walked into a gym by myself, it would be really cliquey, and you know, I'd be like the odd one out, and everybody hates the newbie, and I'm the dummy who can't barely walk in a straight line without tripping over my own feet, you know? And they finally were like, look, you'll be fine. Like, come on. And I just went one day.
You've definitely become more coordinated.
So much more coordinated. I have balance. I can stand without just tipping over randomly, which sounds funny, but like, I can't describe to you how bad my balance and coordination was.
Coincidentally, does that help your riding now? Like, I'm assuming you still do that. Does it help? Does it do anything that makes that better?
A lot. Just in general, my coordination. Horses was the one place that I actually had really good coordination. Like, my hands and feet worked well together, and my body was pretty balanced. And then I get on my own 2 feet, and it's like a newborn. But jiu-jitsu has helped so much. Like, they laugh at me. One of the black belts was complimenting me at the gym the other day because I was in combat and they went to sweep me. Obviously, I say this
and she
full well knowing that they could have swept me if they had wanted to, right? But they did it at the rate that they normally do it with me, you know, not to like throw me across the mat. And they were like, wow, you didn't go down that time. You know? And it's like just that starting to get my balance. And it's so cool to see how much I've changed in a year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What speaking of that, then Gary, I don't think I've ever asked you, how did you get in jiu-jitsu?
I was just going to ask you guys that because, you know, jiu-jitsu wasn't a popular thing, you know, years and years ago.
We're old as fuck, right?
That's what I'm saying. Y'all old.
Yeah, so okay, so me being old as shit.
I'm almost 40, so don't worry.
We were getting ready to have our second kid, and I looked in the mirror and I was like 200.
This is you and Butch. You and Butch have a kid together, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Butch impregnated me, and I was getting ready to have my second child. But no, me and my wife were getting ready to have our second kid. Yeah. And I was 270 pounds, and I was like, God, I am out of shape. I remember that it was rough with the first child, and it had been 8 years since we had a kid, and I was like, I got to do something. And I had watched UFC like back in the day. I went down to the video store, which Abby, you probably don't even know what that is, but a video store.
She has a Blockbuster when she was 3.
Okay, yeah. So I went down to the video. Like in high school, I would rent videos. I would watch the UFC and stuff, and I seen Hoist Gracie, and I Hoist Gracie, tapping Dan Severn in UFC 4 probably imprinted itself on me more than anything else. And I'd seen a thing, a buddy of mine was doing jujitsu and it was local. And I lived in a small rural area, and for jiu-jitsu to be close to me, I was like, man, I got to go try this out. Hopefully I can get into shape and do something I love. And that's what got me into it. And I went from 270 pounds to about 185 pounds in about 6.5 months.
It happens fast when you really put your mind to it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and then it became all about jiu-jitsu because about 5 months in, I started competing. And after the competition bug got me, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to do everything that I can to be in shape. It wasn't even about losing weight at that point. It was just like, I need to be ready for competition. Yeah. And so I started competing, did really good on a local level. So the things that kept me in jiu-jitsu was probably one, I wanted more knowledge. I wanted to know all the secrets. And really, I always talk about jiu-jitsu being magic tricks. The reason it works is because I know something you don't know. Exactly. I know where it's hidden. You don't know that the ball is behind my hand, and then I do, and there's the ball. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing in jiu-jitsu. And so I wanted to know all the secrets, and I wanted to know all the tricks. But I also, listen, I'd be lying if I said I didn't love beating the shit out of people. Yeah. It's like one of my favorite things is like telling another man that he has to say uncle. Like, that's great. and so that kept me in it, and I had a lot of success that drive me forward. And success breeds more success. I think I was able to get a fight to win match when I was a purple belt. Got to do a lot of cool stuff, got to meet a lot of cool people, kind of led me to Butch. And I know that the reason I know Butch is because I think maybe I did good at his competitions when he was promoting stuff, and that kind of blossomed into our friendship. So that's how I got into jiu-jitsu, and that's the reason I stuck with it. Now it's just like, it's habit. So I just keep doing it.
I mean, can you even imagine your life without jiu-jitsu? Like, we were just talking about how if we take a day or two off, we start to lose our minds.
Yeah. I had to take 2 weeks off because I was really sick. So this was, I don't know if y'all saw, but we had 2 competitions pretty recently. We had the IBJJF, and then like 3 weeks before that, I think, we had a local one in Fort Lauderdale. And I wasn't going to compete the one in Fort Lauderdale. I was out for 2 weeks, so sick. I couldn't go to the gym. And then I got back, the day that I got back, I screwed up. I think it's my meniscus on the inside of my knee, to the point where, I mean, literally, it wasn't pressure when I walked so much, but if somebody touched it like a feather touch, it sent me to the ground in pain. And I strapped a brace on it, and I said, you know what, it's going to hurt for a month, whether I do jiu-jitsu or I don't. And I'm so sick of not doing jiu-jitsu. And I ended up, this is great. We were actually recording a podcast here, and Margot's like, hey, I got a couple shots of vodka. I need to get out of my freezer. You want to take one?
Oh, no.
So we took a couple shots of vodka. We went to go get tacos, and I pulled up. This is like 4 days before the competition. I've been back to training for 2 weeks, but I've had a hurt knee, and I haven't really been going full out. And I have a couple shots in me, so I'm being dumb, of course.
And she signs up.
And I signed up, and then I went, and I think that was the best thing that ever could have happened, though, because all the stress and anxiety that I normally have for like 2 weeks before, I didn't have time to have it. You know, it was like, okay, I guess I'm competing Saturday. And then Saturday came, and poor Margot's over there making sure that she's on weight. And I'm the asshole who's sitting there like eating donuts. I had a big meal. I'm chugging my water, you know, and I went and I just realized how much I've changed as a person and how confident I've become. Like, I went in and I did well, like not just my jiu-jitsu, but how I felt in myself. I felt so much more confident. I walked onto the mat and I said, I belong here.
But it comes back to what you're saying about how, like, I know something that you don't know, you know, and that's when in that last competition, like, you kind of realized that you were on a different level because you knew how to get into positions that the other people didn't. And it's funny how that works physically. And even as you get older and you have these aches and pains and stuff, like, you can work around that. So, you know, I like that you said, like, it's like a magic trick, you know, that's really relatable because you do know something that everybody else doesn't know.
And there was a point that I was trying to wrap it back to what you said, and I just got lost on a tangent. So sorry about that.
No. And I will say that, like, I do know, congratulations on both of you, because you guys medaled at IBJJF, correct?
Yes.
Right. And Abby, you got gold, I think.
I did.
Yeah. So congratulations. Absolutely. It's, I've always said this: time in will show results. If you put the time in, you'll get the results. And so it's obvious that you guys put the time in.
Yeah. Do you guys still compete now, or has it been a while since you competed? Because like sometimes when you own a school and you're teaching classes and stuff, like I noticed like a lot of black belts and stuff don't really compete as much as they used to. Do you guys?
So I'm a brown belt under Butch, and
okay.
Usually what happens is Butch will have a he'll put on a promotion. He has WVGO, West Virginia Grappling Open, and when he puts those on, I always bring my stuff in case I'm needed. And I'm a brown belt, and so if I'm needed, I will go ahead and make the call. But my right now, my interest is just teaching and training and bettering myself. That being said, I do feel the bug. It's hard to get rid of it. Once you, like, for me, once I started competing, like, I constantly want to compete, and I have to check myself because I still have family. And then I'm also helping other people try and learn their stuff. And so the selflessness has to come in. You know, I have to be a little more altruistic and help other people on their journey. But I'd be lying if I said that it didn't get me sometimes. That the competition bug gets me. And then I'm like, you know what, I guess maybe it's time to shed 10 pounds and get down to fighting weight and get ready because I need to go murder some people.
Yeah. I feel like in the last 6 months since I've been like on this whole like losing weight and really trying to up my jiu-jitsu game, I feel like I have been pushing all of my friends away, all of my family away. Like my poor dog, like I try to take him out as much as possible. And he's 150 pounds. He needs to exercise. He needs to get out. And if I could turn the laptop around, you would see how much laundry I have right now, just because I have a change of clothes in the morning at the gym, and then I have my work clothes, and then I go running after work, and then I go to jiu-jitsu. So it's like everything in my life has been pushed away. So it's even harder for you guys when you have families and kids, and so as you, like I was saying, like it's hard to compete more as you get older, and I'm still, by myself and only have myself to take care of. So I have enough time to do it now. And I'm kind of working towards getting to as high of a level as I can before I take on more responsibility in the rest of my life. So
yeah, well, and there is a bit of selfishness that comes with it, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to be there, and me and Butch have talked about this. There is a bit of selfishness that has to happen if you want to be a competitor, if you want to be an athlete. Some things have to be put on the back burner. And I think, like I've been lucky enough that my wife and my kids have understood that, like, during my competition time, like, hey, this is important to me. I need to get it done. And now I'm on the other side of it. Now I'm a supporting character and I'm a supporting cast. And that's a hard transition, right? Going from everything about me, I need to compete, I need to eat right, I need to train more, 5 days a week in the gym, 6 days a week in the gym. To now I'm gonna be here to support everybody, and it's not about me anymore. So it's rough. Butch, how did you get into jiu-jitsu? I kind of know the story, but
did they have jiu-jitsu in the 1912s?
Oh yeah.
No. I was trying to avoid all these. Yeah. Well,
you just made that I can drink.
Yeah.
It was back there when Mitsuyo Miyota started, Japanese jiu-jitsu, Count Miyota. But no, it was just like Gary. In 1993, the UFC came out. I remember watching in high school. I think I was a senior in high school, unfortunately. But I remember watching it. I was like, man, I would never do that stuff. That's crazy, right? And then that was 1993. Probably 1997, and that was in Ohio. I moved to West Virginia to go to college, play some football and stuff. About that time, I moved to this little tiny town called Glenville, West Virginia, and there happened to be an article in the newspaper, this guy that just fought in a Gracie competition. So it was kind of weird, and I was like, you guys probably, West Virginia is so rural and so small. If you see an ad in the newspaper, I'm probably going to see that guy tonight because it's so small. It literally. So I saw this newspaper ad. And then I'm like, oh, that guy's full of shit. So then I go work out. There's the guy, right? He's there. Like, hey. I was like, did you really fight the Gracies? And he said, no, I didn't fight the Gracies. They had a jiu-jitsu competition. I fought MMA in it. And I was like, oh, well, and I still didn't believe him. I was like, yeah, whatever. And I didn't do anything. I was nobody. I played some football. But I was being a douche. I was like, well, sure. Like if you fought the Gracie, I'll fight you tonight. Literally that. yeah, think of how cool that sounds. And he was like, well, show up.
Like, you're that guy.
Yeah, so I was that guy. So yeah, so I showed up and they all beat me up, and it was not fun. But I just kept coming, right? And so it's funny because one of the guys that was there, he fought in Pride. He was in Pride 2 with Hicks and Gracie and all this. So I mean, I was in the mecca, the unbeknownst to me, of all the people doing everything. So anyway, yeah, I'm helping this guy get ready for Pride. We're doing all this stuff. I don't know anything. And then that's when MMA TV, mixedmartialarts.com, Underground. I don't know if you guys still go on that, but that was the biggest martial arts bulletin board. That's back when people used to go on chat boards and talk on the internet. So the internet was just coming out, sadly, but that's true. The internet was still coming out. So I literally, Hoist Gracie was on there talking. I just literally wrote him and said, hey, would you train me? And he wrote back. He said, sure. You know, I was like,
Awesome.
Okay, now what? It was so odd. So I was like, well, how does that happen? How do I make that work? And he said, what? Talk to my manager, put a schedule together, put a seminar together, and we'll make it happen. So I did. And Hoist came down, and being the same douchebag that I was, like the same story, I went after Hoist. I tried to kill him. I literally did. And obviously it didn't work. So he broke my arm, popped my jaw out,
Right.
Did a couple other things. Yeah. But I didn't know. So I did not think I was going to beat Hoist Gracie at all, for sure. But what I did think is that I needed to impress Hoist Gracie. I invited him to train. The way I was looking at things is that Hoist is going to be my trainer. I'm going to be a UFC fighter. I've got to show Hoist that I'm a tough guy, right? That's how my mind was working. So I mean, literally, I would go after him. He'd tap me like 30 seconds. I would like roll over, and I'd get up, and I'd be like, let's go again. Because I'm trying to show him I'm a tough. So even if literally one time he popped my arm out, basically broke my arm, like Jason DeLucia, in the UFC.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's go again. And he was talking shit to me too. He's like, Butch, that's called putting it in second gear. And I was like, well, you're going to need some more gears, motherfucker.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like, by the time it was over, I mean, I was bleeding, my face was tore up, and we got in my car because, of course, I was his ride. I was the guy that invited him. And he belittled me in the car, and I needed it. He said, don't test yourself against me, test yourself against other white belts. And I didn't know, I didn't really even know what that meant at the time. I said, well, I thought that's what you wanted. And he's like, yeah, if you beat me, it's going to be all over the internet. If I beat you, nobody fucking cares. I was like, solid point, Hoist.
Exactly.
I'm very sorry. And yeah, he's like, yeah, no, you test yourself against other white belts or blue belts, not against me. And he put me in my place. And then from there on, that was probably 2000-ish or so, somewhere in that region. But anyway, we trained all the way up till I was a purple belt in 2004. And then eventually moved on, not because I didn't like him. Of course, he's still my idol. If it wasn't for Hoist Gracie, none of us would be doing jiu-jitsu, family. It just came down to the fact that when his dad, Elio, was dying, they made the switch to self-defense jiu-jitsu. I was more into the sport, competition and the stuff that we were watching on TV. And they kind of made the switch to where you had to wear all white gis and do the things that I really wasn't into. Doesn't mean that I don't believe in it. Like to this day, this morning, I was teaching a self-defense seminar that's solely because of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm in forever great debt to them. But anyway, yeah, that's why I started. It was just random. And truthfully, even when I started with the guy that I mentioned, they weren't straight in. They were more still stand-ups. I did Golden Gloves for a couple of years until I got hurt. And then I think it was 1998, I tore my rotator cuff. And that's when it really went straight to jiu-jitsu because I couldn't throw punches anymore.
Yeah.
So we started getting on the ground and doing some stuff. And quite honestly, even though that guy, Leon Ramsey, which is a big deal, but even though he was still more heavily into stand-up, we were running UFCs at the time. So I was still like, quote unquote, training from Hoist because we'd rent UFC 1 or 2 and watch an arm bar and then go back to the gym and try to recreate it. There was no instructionals. There was no people teaching at that time. It was strange. And then in West Virginia, there was no jiu-jitsu period, right? Like in order to train jiu-jitsu, I started a gym, which was in my basement. And I just invite people to come down to my basement and cuddle with me. Basically, I didn't know jiu-jitsu. We just kind of like do some weird stuff and leave all sweaty and groan and moan. And it was kind of odd looking back, but somehow I'm here. Like somehow it all kind of works out,
It is funny how, connected the jiu-jitsu world is and how close to like Hoist Gracie everything is now. And this next new generation, it's like a whole new world of jiu-jitsu. It's almost completely different. And, you could still come in contact with the pros and, you know, the highest level, like you were saying, the highest level of jiu-jitsu practitioners can be your neighbor, you know. But it is funny how years ago, I had an ex-boyfriend who's 44 now, I think, and he's a fantastic black belt. And he started in the early 90s too, when no one knew what jiu-jitsu was. He was driving an hour and a half, 2 hours, you know, and being taught by a blue belt who had learned in a whole other state what jiu-jitsu was. And people nowadays have so much access to such incredible new ideas and everything in jiu-jitsu. It's just so funny how just in the last 20 years, how much has changed and how much has expanded in jiu-jitsu.
Well, and that's an interesting thing too, like how much we live, at least us doing jiu-jitsu now.
Yeah,
I think we have the opportunity to do what future jiu-jitsu people don't necessarily have. Yeah. Because there will come a point where jiu-jitsu is popular enough that guys are making money, and the top level guys won't have to do constant seminars and meet and greets and be at all the events. And,
we're very lucky.
And so you know, I've been to a Renzo Gracie seminar. I've got to meet Renzo, and I've got to meet Kurt Osiander, and I've got to meet, you know, like high level guys that compete at the top of the echelon. You know, I've had dinner with Helsing Gracie. You know, it doesn't get any
on the street recently.
Yeah, and you don't get any closer to the top, and we are going to get to a point where that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And so this is a kind of a special time, I think, for jiu-jitsu, that we still have accessibility to those guys.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we talked about earlier, about how you can go and train at these open mats, these seminars with these amazing people, you know, high level people. Like for me, I'm a little baby white belt nobody, but I get to go train at our gym with these incredible black belts who, by all rights, could say, I'm not rolling with you because you're a white belt. But instead they say, hey, you're the future, you're the next generation. We want you to become the future black belts, you know, and they do it with you, but you know, Margot's like a little more experienced, and I don't know what the black belt perspective on that, but I went to an open mat with Renato Tavares at the main headquarters a couple weeks ago, and I went with one of the black belts from my gym, and we went up there. Just again, I'm a nobody, you know, I walk onto the mat, I was the lowest belt there. I think there was maybe a couple other white belts there, and I specifically had multiple black belts pick me out to come over and roll with them. And they know the black belt that I went with, and they obviously know what gym I'm from. But for them to take the time out of their day, they're not going to gain anything necessarily from rolling with me. You know, there's way people that they could gain way more from, and maybe they want it for some reason that I don't understand. But the fact that they were willing to take the time out of their day to say, hey, come roll with me, I'm going to teach you something. And when I roll with them, they gave me commentary, or afterwards they said, hey, if you do this instead of that, it'll tighten this up, whatever it is, you know. In no other sport do you have that, you know?
Yeah, like Tom Brady's not going to walk into your house and throw a football with you.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I wish. Just saying, but.
Gary and I are not even gay, and we wish the same, right?
I mean, you can be honest with us. We know you guys are stuck in the basement somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's a special rule. As long as we don't look each other in the eyes, it's not that gay, you know.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you might have this in Florida, but no, it is. And what you're saying, Abby, I think what they got out of it actually was jiu-jitsu, right? It's because when people say that, like, I don't know, we have the same. I'm not acting like I'm special like those guys. Those guys are special, but I know some people are afraid to ask me to roll because I'm a black belt, right? Like, again, I'm not saying I'm at their level, but I'm like, no, ask me. At least what I get out of that is not that I think we're going to have this technical role, because we're not. What I get out of that is that you're another person that enjoys jiu-jitsu, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to have fun. And then when I see your face afterwards, hopefully you're happy. That's what I got out of it, right? Like, and there is other technical roles I can have. That's a different part of it, right? And that's what some people wonder, the same thing. They're like, well, I see you roll mostly with purple belts and brown belts, and it doesn't mean that I don't like the other ones. It's like, I know that they're going to do the counter that I need them to do to work on the move that I need to work on. So that's one part of the game. Then there's another part of the game where maybe it's not that I want the person to do the counter. I'm working on something new. And then that's one part of the game, right? So I can work on that same. Then the other part is this person loves jujitsu, and I want to cultivate that. I want to water that seed where they're like really happy and they're excited that they go to roll with you and meet you. And you say, okay, man, like you're doing great. Stick with this. You're going to be awesome. Like this is where I was at, you know, a certain point. And I see that spark in you, and I hope that you stick with it. Cause sometimes it's hard too, as a trainer, as a teacher, as Gary and I too, we struggle with sometimes maybe there's somebody like you or both of you, right? Especially you, Abby, because we see more with white belts where you put all this time and effort in somebody and you're like, man, I see something in this person, they're going to be amazing. And then all of a sudden they quit. And you're like, damn, that sucks, right? You put all this stuff into them, but also you don't bitch about it because that's the nature. Like there's the blue belts that quit all the time. And if I worried about all those people that quit, that I put time into, I'd be a miserable person, right? But there is the special group that you get to, like I said, water the seed for somebody, and then they're going to be better than you. There's people at my gym right now that honest to God are better than I am for sure. And in a less amount of time. And some, it doesn't matter what the excuse is, right? Like kind of what you said, Margo, is that, you know, I couldn't go on every corner and find a blue belt. Like literally when I trained, there was nobody. So I did just, yeah. When you mentioned it, I took seminars from blue belts and I paid $75 for a blue belt. And I was happy to, right? And now every gym's filled with blue belts and purples and browns and blacks. And you go to YouTube and find a million moves. There was no YouTube, you know, there was no instructional, like
no internet.
A video. There's AOL. It's so sad. It's just like somebody asking me, did you see the airplanes? How was the black and white TV? It's very sad. Yeah, that's how the jiu-jitsu community was. So it's almost the same where I'm like, I had to walk uphill in the snow to go to school for 10 miles and then back home the same. It's like the same conversation with jiu-jitsu. It's like, you don't know what I had to go through. But instead of like bitching about that, I'm just saying like, you guys are so lucky, right? And so my job now is to cultivate that, is to pass on the love that I enjoyed and just, you know, and also meet all other awesome people. There's nothing better. Like us having this conversation now is amazing, quite honestly. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's fun. Like I used to remember, because that was the thing and we all went through this period. Margo, maybe you were at the end, and I know Gary, you probably were. Like if I saw somebody walk around with a tap out shirt, I'd run over to them and say, you train? And they'd be like, yeah. And then there was a period where I did the same thing and they're like, no, I bought this at Walmart. And I was like, well, fuck you, you poser. Like I'd get mad at those people, right? And then there was a transition period, like, don't be mad at them. They're also just liking our sport. Like we had a transition, right? And I think in a weird way, we're still in that transition because I still see people, it's not tap out now, it's American Fighter, Affliction. Affliction was way back when, I guess it's American Fighter now. Everybody hates going to BW3 and looking at people in American Fighters, whatever it is, right? Like, but at the same time, I also appreciate those people that like our sport, I guess.
But anyway, actually our entire podcast that we lost the audio for, we had a whole conversation about how, you know, at some point jiu-jitsu is going to be mainstream. Like there's millions and millions and millions of fans of the UFC and none of them know how to fight. Like a very select few have ever actually gone onto a mat, have actually been punched in the face, but they're huge fans of the UFC. And at some point, right now, the only people that watch jiu-jitsu matches are people who train jiu-jitsu because they're the only ones that understand how it works. At some point, you're going to have a black belt female cover girl model. You know, you're going to have a Reebok, you know, promotion for a blue belt, some blue belt guy, no name guy, you know. So at some point, jiu-jitsu is probably going to be almost big like Bellator or the UFC. And right now, as you were saying, Gary, we're in a generation where we're very lucky because we're very close to these people. And someday jiu-jitsu is going to be larger than life.
So how do you feel? Because we had this talk recently, sorry, I haven't cut you off, but how do you feel? And I even got comments after I said whatever I said, but people that hate on celebrities that do jiu-jitsu, for example, like one of this podcast we had where like, every time I post a picture of Demi Lovato and she got her blue belt, and I don't post it because I like Demi Lovato, I'm like, I think it's cool that she's promoting jiu-jitsu. So I'll just share whatever she just wrote. Same with Ashton Kutcher, same with Jason Statham, Keanu Reeves, on and on, right? Like, but everybody else is like, fuck them celebrities. They're trying, you know, like, or they'll say that's not real jiu-jitsu. They're taking privates and they don't. And like, why are we arguing? They're like, they're pushing our sport into the mainstream. That's what we want in a weird way. I know it's taken away our coolness factor, but it's also cool, you know, like in my opinion, I think it's cool.
I mean, there's 20-year-old girls who are you know, sitting on their fluffy white fur covered, you know, bed taking selfies, who were like, oh my God, Ashton Kutcher, who's like, oh, what's jujitsu? I should check that out. And all of a sudden, they're a jujitsu practitioner, because that girl would have never heard of jujitsu had she not been a fan of Demi Lovato and listened to her music. She would have never known what jujitsu is if she didn't fall in love with Ashton Kutcher. You know, it's cheesy, it's tacky, it's weird, you know, these celebrities, you know, but there were so many fans of Keanu Reeves who would have no idea what jujitsu was unless they were a fan of Keanu Reeves. And yeah, maybe it's cheesy and weird that it's a celebrity thing, but it's bringing people into the jujitsu world who would have never experienced it before. And I think it's a good thing.
And a lot of it too, like, you know, I grew up in a culture where we all did to some extent, but you know, when I was a kid growing up, there was a lot more of the, you know, Blockbuster was, everybody went to Blockbuster once a week and you get your movies for the weekend, right? And it started to be where you saw these celebrities, and social media started to come out, whether it was MySpace or then later on Facebook and everything, where these celebrities were really pushed forward, you know, and they became everybody's idols. And I never really believed in the whole idol thing, because I think humans are flawed and I would watch too many people do dumb things. But I look at these people and go, sure, they may have done 1,000 things that I disagree with, but at the end of the day, they do the thing that I love. They train jujitsu. You know, why would we hate on them? Sure, you don't have to like everything about them. There's people that I train with that I'm sure if I knew them on a personal level, I probably wouldn't like everything about them. That's the nature of humans. But
that's a great point.
When they do jujitsu, we have that common thing.
There's a common ground. Oh, and it, you know, like you were saying before, it almost, sorry, the dogs broke out of the room. Hey!
I could hear the chain rattling. It's kind of serious.
We have made it. Duncan is very toy aggressive. So when the other dog keeps picking up some of his toys and he's getting angry. But yeah, I mean, it really brings reality to the forefront, to where these people are no longer just celebrities. These are people that you're literally physically rolling with, and it makes it more personal. And I think, you know, I think jujitsu should be a little bit more mainstream. I think if more people took jujitsu classes and were humbled, the world would be a less aggressive place in general. So I think it'd be great. And
we talked about, like she said in that podcast that we unfortunately lost so much the audio on. We talked about one, sponsorship in jiu-jitsu, and how we both believe that, or at least I believe, I think you kind of agree with me on this one, that I wish more jiu-jitsu competitors went for bigger things, right? Jiu-jitsu is so niche that people aren't going for Skull Candy or Nike or Alphalete or whatever the big brand is. They go for the jiu-jitsu brand, whatever it is, you know, which isn't a bad thing. Like, of course, go to your market, but at the same time, broaden. The perfect example is I got a call from a friend of mine the other day, shall not be named, and he called me up and he's like, hey, Abby, I got a question for you really quick. You know, I've been thinking maybe I should try MMA, and I know you don't do MMA, but do you know anything about it? Like, what should I do? And he had some questions for me, and I don't know much, but I know enough to say, yeah, go here, don't go there, whatever, right? Or I can find information for you. And I said, well, that's cool, but maybe you should start with jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai first, kind of dip your feet into it. And he literally says to me, oh, cool. Are those kind of like MMA? I was like, well, that's the issue right there. People don't even know what
MMA means.
Yeah.
Like, he means he trains UFC, right?
And that's nothing against him. Like, he's watched UFC for a long time. He'd never heard it broken down as, oh yeah, these, you know, it's mixed martial arts. There's multiple things in it. But I think if we start allowing those celebrities and going, okay, cool, maybe we don't agree with everything that you do as a person. Maybe I don't care about your life as a celebrity, but cool, you do jiu-jitsu. Let them promote it, because all they're doing, like Margot said, is bringing those girls or those boys who would never, ever think about it or hear about it or see it, bringing them to go, oh, hey, you know, whatever it is, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, type that in and you start a Gracie school, whatever it is, you know, and or find the local gym. It doesn't matter. But I say, you know, encourage that. Why not? It's not hurting us.
It's funny that, you know, that people in general, we have this idea that we want to be ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's a band or whatever it is, like for some reason, you know, like if you were the first guy to listen to Metallica at your school,
yeah,
you felt special. And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. I was doing jiu-jitsu before it was niche. And same thing with Metallica. Like, I was listening to before anybody. Now that everybody likes them, they're a sellout. It's not the same. And now we're starting to see that with jiu-jitsu is like that, not because Butch is not this way, but there are people who are like, oh, I was doing jiu-jitsu before it was cool, and I was doing jiu-jitsu before it was the thing to do. And I don't understand. I never understood why people want to keep it secret. You know, and there are a lot of people who want to keep it secret because if it's my thing, then it's something special. And I guess it's just like any secret, right? Like if I have something that not everybody has, that makes it more valuable. And I think that's the way people feel about stuff like that. And so I never understood that, like why people try and keep that thing to themselves.
Yeah, and I get it. I think a lot of it is people tend to get very, very territorial about things, you know. You'll see it. I mean, I don't know how much y'all experience it, but when you cross train at different places, I've cross trained a couple of places, and you know, you see sometimes where they get a little bold, you know, oh, this is the new kid, you know, I want to make sure that they know that I'm the superior one. I was here first, whatever.
I'm the alpha.
But there is this idea that when it becomes big, when people know about it,
it's not cool anymore.
Less cool.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because I'm one of those people, I say let it go mainstream, you know, it's like the UFC. The UFC wasn't, you know, MMA wasn't a thing, you know, it wasn't known. And now
Pride.
And now everybody knows it. You know, my mom, who could not imagine a less I don't know, pleasant sport for her. She is like the anti-fighter. You know, she knows what UFC is. If you say that, she's like, oh yeah, I know what that is. You know, she could probably name Conor McGregor and maybe somebody else, you know.
I always say jiu-jitsu is like Fight Club. And, you know, the first rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club, but in jiu-jitsu, the first rule of Fight Club is tell everyone about Fight Club.
Yeah.
Like,
much like CrossFit, right?
Yeah, CrossFit. I always say, I feel like I talk about jiu-jitsu like I'm a vegan CrossFitter.
Yes. Yeah. And only somebody that knows those sports know what you're talking about, right? Because there's tons of memes where, it's nonstop, right?
Yeah. Sorry, we keep getting up off camera. One of the dogs is going crazy. One of our side hustle things that we were talking about is that I do dog boarding. It's a little crazy.
No, it's good. It's the first podcast we did with girls and dogs at the same time, which is interesting, right? Somebody's going to listen and they're going to be like, that was great. Maybe they like the dogs better than all of us. I don't know. It's going to be.
Yeah, they don't even care about what we have to say. They just want the dogs in the film. Come here, Don.
Maybe I had this question. I forgot part of it, but I do want to ask it before I forget. And it may be stupid to you, but since you brought it up, like you were talking about this guy that you dated, who was my age, by the way, and so 44. You're like this, like you're really old. But do you? Since Gary and I are both married, and I had this question because this happens at the gym a lot when guys or girls start dating. We lose them, right? We'll lose them during the duration of the relationship, and maybe they'll come back. But do you find it hard, or like since you guys are probably dating now, do you find it hard to find somebody, or do they have a hard time if they don't do jiu-jitsu and you do? Is it kind of a weird thing, or?
I kind of, okay, Duncan. Sorry, the dog's going crazy.
He's excited.
Yeah. I got into jiu-jitsu because I had just gotten out of a terrible relationship with some loser. And I actually weirdly started jiu-jitsu to stay away from men, not realizing that it was male-dominated sport, which I even hate that word because it's not a male-dominated sport. Anyone can join. But I kind of did that to stay out of the dating world. And then probably 5 months in was when I met my ex, and I was with him for 6 years or so. So through my whole jiu-jitsu career, I guess you could say, I was with one person. And now that, you know, he's moved on and everything, and I've moved on, I've just been focused on jiu-jitsu. I don't really, not into the whole dating scene. I've got too much going on and don't really care. I'd rather just focus on myself and jiu-jitsu, and you know, I take care of myself. I pay my own bills. I've got my dog, my family, and that's, you know, and then she's busy all the time. So it's like not even a second thought.
No, that's interesting, because I wondered, you know, because I see, you know, owning a gym, I see everything, right? Like we have a ton of classes. We have Muay Thai, kickboxing, all this, but especially our cardio kickboxing, it's mostly girls, you know, and when they walk through, it's like, like a piece of meat just walk through the gym. So everybody's after him. I'm sure people are asking him out all the time. And, I'm sure, I just wondered how awkward it was, or,
we have a pretty good gym culture too. Like that's not really a thing.
I mean, I go to open I mean, maybe it's just because I have kind of a masculine vibe for some reason. If I go to open mats, like people, obviously I still get hit on, like you should see my DMs and my Instagram. It's horrendous, but I just answer people back with the most sarcastic shit that they don't even people don't even send me a second sentence.
It's funny. If you could see our DMs on our Jitzchickz page,
it's hilarious.
So Margo handles the page for the most part, and I pop in when I want to, because I'm really, really bad at social media and at responding to people. But I laugh because if you could see like the split, when they hit on Margo, it's like, how disgusting can I be? I shut them down. And when they hit on me, she's like, I cannot believe that you would ever do this. This is completely inappropriate. She is 12 years old.
Yeah, I tell her that Abby's 12.
Well, this is what because I don't, obviously, I don't want to hear it. No, because just so you know, I ask all the guys that are the same thing. I didn't live through the Tinder era and all this stuff. Yeah. I don't know. So I ask these questions all the time. I'm like, just tell me. I'm not trying to be weird. I just don't know what it's like.
Oh, ask away.
We like talking about this stuff because there's a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah, no. Well, and so when you hear songs like people slide in your DMs, nobody's ever slid into my DM. So I'd like to know what you guys are talking about. Yeah, like these are interesting stories to me, and I don't want to hear like the creepy stuff, but I just want to know how you handle it, because I don't. And maybe you're just so used to it as a girl, you're just like, shut the fuck up, and you move on, or you don't respond. They don't write back. Maybe, I don't know. Again, I haven't had to deal with it. Maybe Gary deals with it all the time with his beautiful haircut that he got today. I do not ever. just so I don't. Well, and I mean.
I think this is for me, the real question is this: are guys at jiu-jitsu different than guys in regular life? Because the idea is that you're talking about a bunch of meatheads who get together and they grapple and they're trying to submit each other and beat each other up. Yeah. And are those guys different than the guys you would see in everyday life, including the guys who slide into the DMs? Because I think most of those guys probably are not jiu-jitsu guys. They're probably just internet guys.
Yeah, the jiu-jitsu guys are far more respectful. Mm-hmm. The jiu-jitsu guys are not the pushy, weird ones. The weird ones are the total submissive cucks who are total beta. They're like, a triangle. Then no, I just blocked them immediately. I don't.
What did you use that term for today? I saw you write that on Instagram too, which is another reason I was like, I'm so glad that I'm talking to her, because a lot of people don't even know what a cuck is. And the fact that you're already calling people a cuck.
Yeah.
You said that again today. I was like, this girl is amazing.
I just can't, you know what it is? I grew up, like I said, I grew up with my dad. We hunt, we fish. We're going on a motorcycle trip in 2 weeks to go to Banff National Park and Glacier National Park. We're going to be riding 8-9 hours a day on motorcycles through the mountains. I grew up, hiking, and you would shoot a deer, tie it to your belt, and walk 12 miles home dragging the deer. I grew up being a tough woman. Now I'm also an emotional person. I'm also, when it comes to somebody, if I'm dating somebody, I'm very sweet. I'm very doting. I'm a very loving, I'm like a Jewish grandmother. I'm like, let me cook you something and help you clean your house and do your laundry, But sometimes what that attracts is, it doesn't attract the most alpha male. It usually attracts a weaker type of man who wants someone to be tough and take care of them. And that's hard for me because that's not what I want. I don't want someone who's weak, I need somebody who can out tough me, who can out alpha me. And and I hate to use the word alpha because it's so cliche, but I'm pretty alpha, and it's hard to find someone who is even tougher than I am, in a sense. And I don't know how to word it correctly, but not a lot of those men exist anymore. And a lot of the guys who we grapple with and train with, and the jiu-jitsu guys, are already, married or have girlfriends and stuff like that. So, like I said, I attract the weirdos on the internet, and I block them immediately. I don't care because I'm not into that. And
where you train, is there a women's only class?
No.
See, and I've wondered about that, the women's only class. Like, how much does that really add or subtract from jiu-jitsu?
I think what helps is the same weight and strength level and body shapes, and you can really discover where your mental jiu-jitsu is when you're going against somebody your own size. So that's why I like competing at a certain weight class and competing at a certain belt level, because it lets you know where you're at in your jiu-jitsu journey. I personally like training with the bigger, tougher guys. I personally like just getting destroyed because it forces me to use my technique, because I don't have the strength against a large man. But I like training with Abby because Abby's we're kind of equal strength, and she's taller, different body shape, different
completely different games because of our different body shape.
Exactly. But we're still the same strength level. So it kind of teaches you how to use your body against somebody who's very similar to you as opposed to somebody who's very different. It's just a different game is all it is.
And I would say for me, some of my best training partners are larger males, kind of what she was saying. And this is not in any way to discount women. And I train with amazing women like Natasha and Margot and the other women that come in our gym. They're awesome. But for me, I work construction. I work with horses. I grew up my whole life doing farm and ranch work. So I have,
and
we jokingly
two brothers.
Two brothers. We jokingly call working man strength, right? So if you ask me to go lift a set of weights, I may not be able to lift massive things, but I can carry a thing of scaffolding above my head, walking down a set of stairs 25 times in an hour, and it's not going to be a big deal to me, It's like this different kind of strength. And so there's sometimes for me, especially as a competitor, right? When I go into these matches, I don't want to feel like I've trained with this size, this exact match up. I want to think that I've trained with somebody who's bigger, stronger, faster, better in every way. So that when I go in, the competition is almost easier than my regular training.
Yeah.
So training with these big guys, and it's a little bit like Margaret said, not that, and I say the working man strength, not that jiu-jitsu is about strength, but there's a difference, right? I was laughing. I went into one of the matches recently, and I went to pull guard on a girl, and I literally, there's in the video, you can see, I almost threw her over my head because I'm so used to pulling on guys that are like 200 pounds and bigger than me. I went to pull guard and was thinking, I'm gonna have to pull hard to get her down. And she literally almost flew over top of my head, which I need to work on.
Yeah.
But
you should have done, you almost did.
Yeah, I could have swept through there.
But this society, the emotional side of women's classes, we're on a Facebook. I'm on a Facebook page. You don't really pay attention to it.
I laugh at it all the time.
Called Women in Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm telling you, it is the most annoying Facebook page ever. All it is women complaining about how it's a male-dominated sport and girl power, and women need to stick together. And it's just be a person. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, or everyone's training. I train with men who are my size too, and they're still stronger than me because it's testosterone, but I don't like to separate the two. I like doing the women's open mats for people my strength and my size. But I'm not a big feminist in any way, shape, or form. I kind of like to just, I train with anyone who wants to train with me.
Right. Well, this is the conundrum that I find, right? Because a lot of people, I don't know any woman who trains, and I know I've been doing jiu-jitsu a decade now. And in a decade, I've met hundreds of women who do jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've ever met a woman who said at my jiu-jitsu academy, things are weird.
Oh, there's 1,000 of them on the Facebook thing. It's so
and that's the interesting thing. How is it that I have, and I'm a heavy competitor for, 8 of those 10 years, I was a heavy competitor, and I know tons of women who do jiu-jitsu. How is it still, I'm just confused on how I don't know anyone who's ever trained at a bad academy or where anything. Obviously, we have individuals who are weird, but women, it's not just women who say that guy's weird. It's everybody. Everybody says, hey, man, Terry over there by the wall, he's kind of weird, right? Everybody has, and I don't want to call out Terry's. It's not just Terry. I'm just giving him a name, but everybody has those academy, has that guy in the academy is man, he's kind of creepy. But I have those guys at work. And so I find it interesting that we have this conundrum that there's, the idea that women aren't equally represented. Well, just join a club, join an academy.
Go train.
Yeah. Well,
why do you have to play the victim?
Honestly, I feel like a huge part of it, and this is something that we've talked a ton about, is this idea that people don't separate, because jiu-jitsu is a very close contact sport, right? I remember my first day going in. That was the first time that I had ever been that close with a person that I didn't know. You're literally like rolling in their sweat.
Sorry,
Margot has a habit of putting herself
just watching you guys
in the most uncomfortable positions, and because she's short, like she goes to choke and it's like chest right on my face, and there's all these uncomfortable
lot of
positions.
titties.
And the thing is, people don't separate it, so they make it a sexual thing when it's not a sexual thing. And I feel like that's where so many of the problems come into, because you hear these girls that are like, oh my God, he touched my tit during the roll. And it's like, no, you broke him down while he was in close guard and he put his hands up to stop himself and accidentally landed on your boobs because they're right in front of you, Or like the other day, I'm a white belt. I'm a dumbass. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to control my body. I accidentally tried to pick up a black belt with my foot using his balls. Yeah. I went to put my foot on his hip and I accidentally missed and went straight for it. And I lifted him and set him back down and and moved to the hip to pick him back up, and obviously he was letting me work, he was trying to get me to do something. And it's like, you have to separate it because there's nothing sexual about jiu-jitsu. It's a close contact sport, but you have to separate it. And the people who don't separate it are the ones who are the keyboard warriors going, oh my God, this and that happened and this happened. And oh, my gym is so weird. And
I also think a lot of the women, especially on the Facebook page, who say, they play that victim mentality. This guy at my gym is creepy and he tried to hit on me and I think he was being weird. They're always like these fat troll, ugly looking women who want attention so bad that they have to invent something in their head, as if someone was paying attention. And I hate to say that, but it just angers me so much, because what it does is these women who want attention so bad that they have to pretend that someone's hitting on them, or they dream up in their head that somebody was being weird because nobody hits on them. What happens is your own low self-esteem and you making up these stupid fake stories, what it does is it ruins that man's life.
And it deters other people.
And it deters other people from doing jiu-jitsu. And the guy's usually just not being creepy. He's just training jiu-jitsu.
Or even, there's a time and a place for things, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be like a guy has an interest in a girl, right? And it goes both ways. A girl can have an interest in a guy at a gym, right? So he kind of makes conversation with you. He tries to get, maybe start something, whatever. And then he one day is like, hey, would you like to go grab a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
And then it turns into, oh my God, he's a crazy guy. He's chasing me down. It's like, no, he's probably been trying to start a conversation with you for a while and you haven't let him have the opportunity. So he finally said, I want to have the balls. I'm going to ask you out. And now you're thinking it's this crazy thing. He's obsessed with you.
Toxic masculinity.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Well, and I'm not going to say this for all guys, but I think I go out of my way to be almost overly accommodating for
a lot
women.
of men in jiu-jitsu are like that, yes.
And I think most guys are like that. Is that not been your experience?
Mm-hmm. I think more men in jiu-jitsu are more respectful than your everyday Joe off the street, for sure. You're always going to have one creepy weirdo, but when you're in jiu-jitsu, you're a family with those people anyway. And all of the people in your gym, we're all going to notice and pick up on the fact that one of the guys is creepy and he's going to be gone. And that's it.
And most of the time, if you're in a good gym, and I don't have a lot of experience, so I'm not speaking straight from experience. I'm speaking from experience from my gym, and I can't speak for the broader jiu-jitsu community. But from my understanding, from talking to people, if you have a good team, a good black belt,
they're going to look out for you.
They're going to look out for you. They notice. They're not dumb. They're not going to not see the guy who's being weird to you, because it's like you said earlier, Butch. They're not just being weird to, or one of you, maybe Gary said it, they're not just being weird to you. They're being weird to everyone in the gym, It's not like, oh, they've chosen you because you're the woman. No, they're saying, I like your toes to the men too,
No, we have, at my gym, for example, I have guys that I just consider socially awkward. I don't think they're creepy, but they would come across creepy for women, but they're just as quote unquote creepy to guys, but they're just socially awkward, right? They're the kind that talk over you. They're just kind of odd. And what I usually tell people is look, the gym is a family. I love those guys. Those are my friends. It doesn't mean necessarily that I hang out with them outside the gym, right? They're not, there's something missing, like there's something off a little bit, right? And so that same thing, like I've had a couple of guys do some weird things around girls, and they weren't trying to be rude to that girl per se. They're just as socially awkward to the girl as they were, right? Like to the guys, they're just assholes, and to the girls, they're just equally as assholes. But it's more it's like talking about the fights they had all the time, or changing clothes in front of the girls, and you know what I mean, stuff like it doesn't make sense, but they're just stupid people, right? Like, and again, like the point, it's not that jiu-jitsu sucks, it's that person sucks, right? It's just
exactly. But there's a lot less of that in jiu-jitsu, because the culture and the mentality of jiu-jitsu alone in and of itself is to be respectful. I mean, like we were saying, it teaches you to be humble, it teaches you to be respectful. So the majority of people in jiu-jitsu are respectful. It's really the people who aren't in jiu-jitsu that are more weird than anything. But to your point, where some people are socially awkward, I do know a lot of people who are a little bit Asperger's, a little bit autistic. Mikey Musumeci is a little bit on the spectrum. I think that's fantastic for jiu-jitsu. They might be a little socially awkward, but their brain works in so much more of a technical way that they advance so much faster in jiu-jitsu. And I love those people. Yeah. And yeah, it might be weird and they might say some things that are a little off, but if you understand them, you're not going to be insulted by it.
Yeah. And I was going to bring this up earlier when I was talking about being able to roll with black belts, and how they try to, nurture, a lot of them try to nurture young jiu-jitsu practitioners. I went and cross-trained a while ago, before I competed one of the times. Anyways, I was maybe 6 months into jiu-jitsu, and I went and cross-trained, maybe a little more than that. I went and cross-trained in another gym because I was out of town. And I remember thinking, because I was so nervous it was the first time I cross-trained in a gym out of my association and without somebody from my gym that I knew with me.
All by your little self.
All by my little self. And I was I was literally like competition nerves, ready to go puke in the bathroom. And I walked onto the mat, and there was a big group of black belts, and all of them, I could see them. They were looking out for me. I got paired with a younger blue belt guy, and he didn't see, I had maybe a stripe or two on my white belt at the time. He didn't see him. And so he's like trying to walk me through, here's how you shrimp. And I was like, I know how to shrimp. And but they were like instructors. They were so kind to like help me out. And my first rolls, I wanted to prove myself. I didn't want to be a jerk. I didn't want to come in and like knee you in the face on accident. But I wanted to be I do that all the time. Mm-hmm. It's so bad. But I want to prove that I roll and that I do jujitsu regularly. And I could tell everybody was, they start out super gentle, like I'm a newborn calf, and then they start picking up the pace to match me as we go, But that's the point being, so many of the men that I've met are super respectful. On occasion, you might meet a weirdo. And I don't have a lot of experience because I've been to only a few gyms. The gym that we train at, PBGMA, is my main gym, but I've cross-trained a couple places. But I mean, for the most part, it's like you said, like almost to the point sometimes where I'm like, will you treat me like a man? Just come at me.
Yeah, just beat me up. I'm ready.
Well, Gary and I think that, but we want to be treated as a cuck. That's kind of our thing, right?
And do you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean?
I want to go in the opposite direction.
I've spent a lot of nights in the corners just watching.
Yeah, okay. That's okay. Now that's creepy. Also, we welcome it. If you want to sit in the corner.
But also, my question is, because the thing is, there's a lot of things that girls can get away with that guys can't, right?
Oh, I'm disgusting, and I say things that men should never say.
Like, I've seen so many situations where, I've had friends where I'm talking them through a situation, right? And they're guys, and they'll have this girl say something kind of weird to them. They're like, what do I do about that? Like, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I'm like, okay, put it this way. If a man said that to me, how would it make you feel?
Yeah.
It's like very uncomfortable. There you go. That's your answer, So I wonder how many men have had weird experiences with women where they say stuff that no man could ever get away with,
Well, and how do you guys feel? Like, are you guys terrified of accidentally making a joke that crosses the line and some woman freaks out about it? I mean, a man these days, if I was a man, I would be paranoid that I would get me too out of something that was just, a sarcastic remark. Like, I worry about that. I know a lot of men who've been like accused of things that they never did. I'd be terrified.
I have an interesting story that it's slightly jujitsu, slightly not. But I was at a party one time, and a girl, I don't even know what her story was, but she was like, "Oh, you do jujitsu?" I was like, "Yeah," and she goes, "I don't think you could choke me out," and that's why I promise you I can't. It was a random thing. I don't even know. It was an odd conversation. I was like, "What? Yeah, I definitely could." I mean, and she's like, "Well, then choke me." So that I did. It was funny. So I was like, "Are you sure?" So I put her in a rear naked choke. Well, here's the funny thing about this story, which is not so funny, but so I take for granted that everybody in the world knows how to tap out. She did not.
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh
And she's not tapping. So I'm like putting it, I'm 6'6", 240. So I was letting her have it. I think her feet were off the ground and everything.
That's
and
hilarious.
then eventually realized she was completely limp. So I just let her go and she hit the ground. I was like, oh shit, you know, and when she woke up, she was trying to call 911.
Yeah.
She was calling the police because I assaulted her, right? It started to become a bigger story than I was. And I was like, looking back, I can make a lot of jokes about it because I was like, well, you asked for it, you know, like those, it's a joke, right?
Yeah. It's a party trick. It's your magic. It's Gary's magic. Gary's magic trick apparently is choking people out at a party.
But it was funny because it's like, man, it was terrifying at the time because I mean, luckily most of the people there were like, they knew exactly what happened. Everybody was standing there.
But try to explain that to somebody who doesn't know what jujitsu is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, people, I think they literally, this was like probably 10 years ago, but they took her phone from her to calm her down. So like, you're not calling the police. Like, this is, he didn't do anything wrong. Like, and I didn't. Like, I tried to explain the story. I'm like, look, like, it took me a while to understand. I'm like, well, she wasn't tapped. You know, like, I was defending myself at first. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, she didn't even know. And I was like, I don't even know why she asked me. I don't know if she was hitting on me or if it was like a joke or she really didn't think she could be choked out. I think it's very confusing because to me, as a jiu-jitsu guy, like I put her in choke and she was unconscious in 2 seconds. So I'm like, yes, I can choke you. Like, are you stupid? You know, like, anyway, that's my closest story to a creepy story, which I still ended up being the victim, which is kind of funny. But otherwise, no, I don't really, you know, like, being the owner of the gym, I don't have as many crazies. I have more stories on the other side of people just being weird both ways, you know, kind of weird. And
now, as a woman, like that same story as a woman, if I were to go to a party and some guy was like, you couldn't choke me out, and then I choked him out, it would be a big joke. Yeah. Yes, right. Exactly. And all the guys would be laughing and he would never call 911. But a man does that to a woman and all of a sudden it's like, I'm calling the police, you know? So it's like,
and that's what, you know, for me, like every role I've had plenty of roles with women and trained with women, and every role that I've ever had with a woman, kind of like Abby said, like I let her dictate the pace of this match.
So
I am not there to impose my will. I am not there to like go harder than she wants to go. Like, it is up to her what kind of jiu-jitsu session this is going to be.
Gary, did you hear what she said? Did you hear what she said, by the way?
I missed it.
Uh-oh. Well, go ahead.
Let him listen to it on the playback.
You just said what you think she'd probably say, as you know, that you're the cuck, right?
I own it.
Like, I don't know. Well,
I mean, that's the experience that we've had is just men who, you know, they know they're stronger than us. They understand even a white belt man will understand how jiu-jitsu works. You know, Greg, one of our guys that we train with, was 200 something pounds. He's actually gotten in really great shape. Huge guy, and he's a white belt, and he's still kind of flaily, but still he's way stronger than both of us, but still very respectful and allows us to work. And, you know, he does his best to use technique and stuff. And that's how most men are. It's just, you know, I don't understand. I think women like to get attention and play the victim. And obviously there are some women that have had bad experiences at gyms. I've had a few bad experiences. The difference with me is that I'm very headstrong. So some women will have a bad experience with a man and they'll cower in fear and they won't stand up for themselves. Like, this was another thing on the last podcast that we talked about that got deleted was, I've stood up for myself from a very young age. I have a weird non-fear type of response. I was 14 years old and I had ridden my bicycle to the beach. I was all of 90 something pounds. And this guy was in the mangroves at the beach in the bushes. creeping up on me and trying to like get close to me and like pulling his pants down and all this stuff. And I literally at 14 years old, 5 foot tall, screaming as loud as I could, chased this guy all the way up through the bushes to his car and took a huge rock and threw it at his windshield. Because I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to stand up for myself. And a lot of women, when weird things happen to them, they cower in fear. So I don't put up with shit. I stand up for myself, and you're the same way too. So I guess maybe it's just my mentality that's different, that I don't understand women who want to play the victim, and instead of saying something directly to the person that's insulting you or being weird to you, they go behind their back and they tell their coach and they say, this person, scared me and all this stuff. Maybe I just have a different mentality about it. I don't know, but I've never experienced it because I've never allowed it to happen.
And that's certainly not to say, and Butch was saying it earlier, it's not to say that none of this happens.
Oh, yeah,
certainly there are instances where somebody does something that's out of line.
And
I think the idea that you guys are saying, which I want to kind of echo, which thank you for being on here and kind of saying it, is that for the most part, I mean, this is a safe space.
For the most part,
Jiu-Jitsu is pretty safe. They're the best. You are around the best people to be around when it comes to like being safe and being around people who can be trusted. For the most part, in general, it's a good community.
Yeah, well, and it's cool because like I know without a doubt, 100%, my team knows me, right? My coaches know me.
We trust
Mario knows me. The other people in my gym know me. If there was somebody who came in and did something that was actually inappropriate to me, I wouldn't even have to say anything.
She would have 10 people stand up for her before she could even open her mouth.
Yeah, they would be there. And not that I need, like Margo was saying, I was going to bring up, if you don't mind me telling a quick story, on a job site. And this is not the reaction that I should have had. I've actually had my company talk to me since then and say, Abby, you do realize that if people make weird sexual comments, you can just throw them off site. Like you're in charge. But I had this guy one day, it was like crazy stressful day. I was pretty new to construction. My boss called me, I need you at this end of the building right now. We have a building that's going up. And I'm like on my way, I'm moving fast. And I walk like a 400-pound bodybuilder male when I'm going somewhere, like puffed up shoulders, and I'm walking past these two electricians.
She walks like she has hemorrhoids, but go on.
And one of them I knew really well. Like we joked around all the time, we were like friendly as coworkers, right? And I'm his boss. I work for the GC. So he made a joke. He's like, oh, Abby looks like she's going to kick somebody's ass. And I was like, you bet. And the other guy who was standing next to him, who I had all of 3 interactions with that were like, good morning, and he says, oh, I'd like if you'd beat my ass. And he said it in the most disgusting sexual way. And he's like this 6'4", 300-pound guy, like big, massive guy, And I looked at him, and this is not the response that I should have had, but I looked at him and I was just like in the moment, right? I went, I got a piece of rebar in my truck that would love to meet your face. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't work. But like,
that's my problem. I just say whatever.
But that's my thing. Like
we always stand up for ourselves, and a lot of women don't, which is why they should be in jiu-jitsu, because you learn the confidence to stand up for yourselves.
For the record, I never reported him, but his buddy who was standing, or not buddy, but his coworker who was standing next to him reported him and got him kicked off site by the next day. So
right. Well, and that goes back to what we were saying, right? Like most of the guys that are around you are there for you. You're like most guys. I personally, when we think about this toxic culture or whatever, I personally don't know that many assholes.
I mean, I know a few, but I pick them out and they're out of my life in 2 seconds.
Right.
That guy's office came to me afterwards, a couple days, and said, hey, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Like, that was completely inappropriate. If anything like that ever happens, tell us, we'll get them thrown off site before you can. We'll get them reprimanded. We'll get them fired if it's bad enough.
See, now this is what I feel bad about, is because like I make jokes like that all the time. Now, if I were to say that to a guy, it would be funny. The guy says that to me, all of a sudden it's creepy. Like I'm kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum, where if somebody said that to me, I would probably think that they were joking, or I would make a far worse joke back, and I would upset them more than they upset me. So I don't think people should just be canceled right away unless they're actually legitimately being creepy.
No, and
but he was legit being creepy.
So sorry, a little bit of background for that. I didn't know this. that guy had said some very, very bad sexual, like not I want to have sex with that girl, like really, really terrible things about me that I hadn't heard, I didn't know.
Yeah, that's
that
crazy.
His bosses found out after that happened. Somebody else came to them and was like, hey, by the way, he's been saying this kind of stuff for weeks.
Yeah, that's weird.
So that was, sorry, there was the context of that. It wasn't like one time he made a joke. It was like this whole thing. But the other guys in the company, not even my company, that heard it, said, this guy needs to be out of here. Like, that's not okay, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's the thing is, like, you kind of prefaced it with the fact that you didn't really know him. You'd only seen him a couple times or whatever. Yeah. Like, you've not formed that, hey, we can joke about this relationship.
Yeah.
And that's a very different relationship to have with somebody. Is like, you're in my inner circle. We've been working together for the last 6 months. I understand your humor. You understand my humor. We know what the line is. There's a difference between that and, hey, I've known you for 3 days. I'm going to make this sexual joke about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was the thing. Like, the guy who made the joke that was next to him before, we had known each other for almost a year at that point. And we talked shit to each other. Not every time we saw each other, we were talking shit to each other. That was just how we both worked, you know? But it goes back to what you were saying, though. Like, most men, and especially in jiu-jitsu gym, and here's my thing, and like you said earlier, it's not that bad things don't happen, but I'm one of those people that I believe you either handle it or you get out. Because if you can't handle it, and your gym can't handle it, and your black belt or brown or whoever the head professor at your gym is can't handle it,
you need to be at another gym.
Then that's a bad gym to be at. You should just leave. Like, there's no point in being there, honestly, if it's that bad.
Yeah, you always have to be, and that's every situation, any job, and nothing in your life is worth being in a situation where someone is dangerous or making you feel uncomfortable.
And that goes for men too. Like, I'm not just saying this from a female perspective, because that's one thing that I feel is neglected a lot, is people don't talk about the fact that
how men
there can be equally bad situations that go the other way. You know,
I know a lot of men who've been, secretly assaulted and they never told anybody, or have had other men be really weird towards them, and they feel even less empowered to say anything. People need to have a little bit more sensitivity towards men too, because they go through a lot of shit too that they don't talk about, because they're trying to be this masculine guy, and
and again, it's kind of what we talked about a few minutes ago about being Me Too'd and that kind of thing. I feel like there's a lot of people in a lot of places that do get very caught up in the, oh no, I have to be really gentle,
I have to be really careful.
And the sad thing is that you do have to be careful today. Like, we're the kind of people, we joke around, we have great senses of humor. I like to think, like, as far as not much bothers us, you can say pretty much anything to us and we're not going to be offended. But so many people aren't like that anymore, and it is scary to think that you could be. I even think it sometimes when even some of the things that I say jokingly, I'm like, man.
I hear myself say shit all the time. I'm like, I should not have said that.
I could easily be attacked for that, and we live in such a crazy, I hate the cancel culture that happens now. We were talking about this earlier. Like, the fact that you say one thing or something comes up, a video that you posted when you were 14 in 1993, when internet was, MySpace was just starting as a thing or whatever. And it's like, really? You're probably a completely different, you could be the same person, but you're probably a completely different person now.
Abby did her first podcast in blackface. No, I'm just kidding.
She's talking about blackface, trans, everything. She's in some trouble.
Trans dogs. Before we went live, everybody, in case whoever's watching this for later, I was asking if dogs at the dog park think that neutered male dogs are trans dogs.
We still don't have an answer to that question. So if anybody wants to write that in the comment section, we can figure that out later, because I don't know. There's no way of knowing, right?
Yeah, we have to ask the dogs. Let's get a dog psychic in here.
We've gone almost 2 hours now. I think that's a great place to end.
I'm hungry.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us and giving us. Honestly, it's good. It's a new perspective for us, right? So we've only had guys on so far, and that's because me and Butch are obviously misogynistic.
Yes.
And so
it's all this toxic masculinity in here.
I think that's what it is. Where can we find you guys? What do we need to do to look up Abby and Margot?
All right, so we have a podcast. We have a podcast Instagram page, Jitzchickz, JITZCHICKZ. We're also on YouTube, and we'll post all the links that we're on SoundCloud, Patreon. We're gonna do a whole list soon.
So they're all of our links currently. If you go to our Instagram, are in our description.
Yeah.
There's a link tree, and the link tree will take you to everything. We don't have much now, but once we start launching on other platforms, it'll be everywhere.
Yeah, we have a few episodes up that were kind of like beginner episodes, but after my motorcycle trip and after Pans, we're gonna definitely be taking more time to record more podcasts and talk more shit. Yeah.
And thank you guys so much for having us on. Like,
yeah, thank you guys so much. We definitely, if you ever want to do this again, just let us know.
Yeah. and we're happy to do this. And also, really quick, Butch, I never got to ask this. How can I get in on these competitions that you're having up there?
Yeah, let's travel.
So yeah, you can go. So Gary is the smart guy. I have brain damage, and I'm very stupid. I have Gary do everything, but as far as anything that requires a memory, no. But seriously, yeah, we would love to have you. And also, before I know that, I mean, obviously that's beautiful. I would love to have you guys down, but I also want to say why I wanted to talk to you guys, because I do see that you guys are doing great things, and it's nice to have some female people that getting into the mix of just jiu-jitsu. There's not a lot, unless I'm stupid, I don't see a lot of jiu-jitsu perspectives from women. I do see a couple, but not as many, and especially from somebody that's not just posting weird pictures or whatever.
Only fans, jiu-jitsu girls.
Yeah. And I had that talk with my wife the other day, not offending those girls, but I just said it's funny because a lot of girls that do jiu-jitsu, they also post a lot of weird pictures and they get like 1,000 likes. I was like, just telling them how like I was telling my wife, it's weird how like a white belt girl can get like 2,000-3,000 likes on a picture. Yeah. I mean, she'll just make herself all up. And then, Gary and I have been trucking around for 20 years. We get like 4 likes on our pictures or whatever, but we also don't have a good duck face or anything else, so it's a little bit different. But.
You gotta post pictures.
Yeah, because we each have a personal page, and we post very different things. Like the two of us have very different personalities, but it's funny because I laugh to myself all the time thinking, man, I could grow this page so much quicker if I just posted some nice ass pictures and thongs.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not
me.
I do,
and no one likes my pictures.
Well, like that's not, and it's different. Like that's not the brand that I particularly want to put out there. And, and it's different. Like Margot with her pictures, her weight loss pictures, that's insane. That is so inspiring, or like the workout pictures and stuff, or doing shit around the house. I feel like it's the context, a lot of it. Sorry, I went on a little rant there.
No, that's perfect. But that's what I was thinking, because it's funny because there's another girl I thought was you guys that I follow. Her name's very similar. It's Jitz something, but very similar. But it was confusing because actually most of her pictures are her in a thong doing workouts also. And I was like, well, this took a turn for the weird. And it was she also had brown hair. I was like, very confusing.
It's all cool. It's all cool to try to, to be a woman in jiu-jitsu and to also feel pretty and also feel attractive. That's great. But if that's all you're doing, then, that's just, you're just kind of whoring yourself out.
Yeah. And my thing is like, I want to be known in the, not that I'm necessarily going to be known in the jiu-jitsu community, but I would rather have people who follow me because they see me that I compete IBJJF or that I weightlift.
And you look good.
Yeah. That rather than being like every single other girl on the internet who literally all she posts, she's like, I do jiu-jitsu. All it is butt pictures, And there's nothing, I have nothing against that. You do you, just not my person.
As my jiu-jitsu starts to suck more and more and get worse, I'll post more butt pictures.
We'll know when you took the turn. When things aren't going well, we'll start.
If you see me like lose more matches, there's going to be a ratio between matches that I lose and butt pictures.
So you can also find us on social media at Margot Posner for Margot. It's on our Jitzchickz page, and I'm at the Abby Shaw.
That's a sweet transition. That was good. That was a good way to bring us home. That was very good.
Again, I'm really excited about to see what the reaction is from our listeners, to see what they think about this. It's nice. Thank you so much for being on here. I think honestly, this is probably one of the best flowing conversations that we had. And maybe it's because women are just better at talking than what me and Butch. I mean, we're just kind of me heads. So
he doesn't shut the fuck up. Oh, sorry.
Really was good, though. I was gonna tell you the same thing.
Told me I had the gift of gab.
Yeah.
Her real name's Gabby.
Yeah.
No, but we
It worked
appreciate
out
you guys kind of
perfectly.
taking a chance on us.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
like you said, it's a little bit outside of what you've been doing the last few podcasts, but we appreciate it. And talking to you guys is so cool. Like you said to us, you have a completely different perspective, like we're a white and a purple belt, you're a brown and a black belt, and you're males and we're females, and you were in the UFC, Butch. Like it's completely different.
It wasn't the UFC. It's just a belt, just so you know. It's hoist gracious.
Sorry.
So, before I get my ass.
Lie. Just lie. Why are you?
Yeah, you're gonna get me killed. So just make sure.
Yeah, that's what she's trying to do.
That's
She
the
does
intention.
this. She walks around. We go out to bars, and she's like, "She's a purple belt. She'll kick your ass." Like, fuck. Now I gotta fight some stranger.
The funny thing is, the lie there is the bar part.
Yeah, we don't go to bars.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll let
So
you guys
thank
go.
so much.
We're gonna go eat fattening food and then pretend that we're fitness chicks. So
Okay. Same with me and Gary, except we're gonna go up the towers and do cuck stuff.
perfect.
So,
Now I'm even more hungry.
all right.
Have a great time. Great night. Bye.
All right.
thank
Yeah.
you. Bye.
Bye.